Howdy.
Howdy.
Hold on, let me.
Is this? You'll have to forgive me. I'm a bit of a boomer, so
I've heard rumors, but I think we managed to make it out of this just fine. We're exactly on time.
sick.
Here, let me turn my
makes me
cam on.
happy.
Hopefully this doesn't freeze my camera. Fuck yeah.
Excellent. This works great.
How you
Everything's
doing?
working great. I'm doing okay. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty great. We had a really big fundraiser last night on stream that I'm still, I guess, basking in the glow of, you know?
I heard. I was listening at the very start of your stream. And congratulations to you and your community on that. That's exciting shit.
Yeah. Fuck my community. I'm the one who was playing Minecraft. I was the one putting in the hard work, okay? They didn't do shit except contribute tens of thousands of dollars.
I'm actually trying to engender as much goodwill with your community as I possibly can, because I have a feeling, and maybe I'm just wrong about this. I'm a naturally paranoid individual, so I have a feeling a lot of them are probably going to not like me much. But right now, they're not sure, you know? So
right, that ambiguity.
Yeah. So I'm trying to suck a little dick before we get started. So hey, Vosh's chat, how's it going? Hope everybody's doing great here at the end of the world.
Right now, they are posting emotes of frogs hugging hearts. So I think that's the positive, the initial positive distribution, inclination towards you. Here, hold on.
Wonderful.
My feet are too warm. Let me kick off them slippers. How's your day? How's CST time zone doing?
CST is, I mean, it's all right. There's this like worrying tropical storm heading right for us, but
what state are you in?
Louisiana. I live in the New Orleans area. I'm on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain, so I'm pretty near New Orleans.
Gotcha. Are there riots going on in your specific town, or I imagine
I've heard
New Orleans?
I've heard of civil unrest, but I have not heard of rioting or mass looting or anything like that. Most of that is concentrated on the other side of the lake in New Orleans proper, as far as I understand it. I may not be completely up to date on it.
Gotcha. We've had some pretty wacky stuff going on in Seattle, so yeah.
I heard, you know what, we were doing a little show yesterday, and I heard, we watched a video of a little Asian CNN reporter getting hit with like a fucking flashbang or something. Yep. And I used to live in the Seattle area. I actually used to live in Bellevue for a little while when I was part of the Drunken Peasants. And nice. I've been up to Capitol Hill. I walked to a park up there and smoked a big fat joint on Capitol Hill. And it's utterly shocking to me that there's like rubber bullets and tear gas whizzing through the air on fucking Capitol Hill. That's some real shit.
Yeah, for me, I grew up. I was raised in Beverly Hills, and we have one like civic building. It's the town hall / police station / fire station / library. It's just this massive building right near the hills. And my folks walked by it and took some pictures and videos just the other day, and seeing like all these landmarks just completely tagged up to the nines. So it's actually really unfortunate because the library is beautiful, but it did make the mistake of being attached to the police department. So what's going to happen?
Sure.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you bringing me on a little earlier than we had initially agreed upon to allow me to jump in a little bit and talk with you about the riots and demonstrations going on.
Yeah, of course. How do you feel about them?
I'm simultaneously filled with a glee that I can barely fucking describe to you. At the very thought that people are because, you know, it seems to me, and I don't like to get overblown with it, but it seems to me every day when I check on this, it's getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Like the momentum has not reached this crest where it's going to start falling off as it usually does. You know, I hear about it in a new state or in a smaller place. And that feels fucking amazing. Like my heart leaps with joy at the idea of people finally rising up and fucking up the infrastructure and the businesses. And I'm sorry, I don't want to get too deep into it already, but can I talk about this? A private owned businesses meme.
You are free to say whatever you like, but if this is your lead in to trying to disappoint my community, you're doing a terrible job so far because they seem to like this.
Okay. Okay, good.
Oh, wait, actually, I'm sorry.
I,
There are some people in chat who are asking, and I've ignored them until this point, but it seems prescient. Can you introduce yourself to some of the people in my audience who might not fully know?
I'm sorry. How rude of me to just walk into your house and start bloviating without even introducing myself. My name is PaulsEgo. I work with TJ Kirk, who I understand appeared here a couple of weeks ago. You guys had a pretty cool talk. I've worked with him for a number of years now. First on the Drunken Peasants, which I also understand you very recently appeared on. I was a part of that podcast for quite some time, and now I do a little show called Deep Fat Fried here on YouTube with TJ and his brother Scotty. We delve into the political realm quite often, and we call ourselves a podcast for the uneducated by the uneducated, because we have 3 different levels of educational failure on the show. We have Scotty, who completed high school but really nothing else. We have TJ, who never bothered to complete high school, and me, who actually has a few college credits under his belt. So, we've got a good mix of uneducated people.
And between the 3 of you, it's basically a doctorate.
Right. That's how I see it too. I'm glad we see eye to eye on that as well. I'm glad we're agreeing already.
With that out of the way,
that's my ham-fisted intro.
With that out of the way, please bloviate.
Okay, so there's this where to start with this fucking shit is, number one, I want to start by saying that I'm 40 years old. I lived through and remember very vividly the 1992 Rodney King riots in South Central Los Angeles. I was old enough to process and have very vivid memories of those. I'm also pretty well acquainted with the history of the 1966 Watts riots in LA in the same exact area. Mm-hmm. And there's a commonality between these that is interesting to me. And maybe it's simple and maybe a lot of people know this or just kind of take it for granted. But the 66 Watts riots started when a man who I regrettably cannot remember what his name is was dragged out of his car in a implicitly segregated area of Watts in South Central Los Angeles on a busy night where people were hustling and bustling and hanging out with each other. He was pulled over by a couple of racist white cops, and he was pulled out of his car, and he was beaten up and roughed up and thrown in the back of the police car, and his car was towed away. And it was one too many. Now, the people that lived in this area had seen this happen uncountable hundreds of times for generations, and it was one too many. And then Watts burned for a long time, and the National Guard was called, and live ammunition was fired at people, and they continued to pick up whatever they could, bricks, rubble, all the shit and that's laying around in Watts, because it's completely neglected, because it's the dark side of town, if you get my drift.
Old-timey bricks, of course. Proto bricks,
of course.
Maybe, yeah. The precursor to the modern brick.
And you can fact check me on this. If you go back and look, there are news reports from this time where they're interviewing some white dude from some other part of LA. And they're going, "Sir, what do you think about, these riots that are going on in Watts?" And he says, "Well, the thing I don't understand, sir, is why would they tear down their own communities? I mean, I understand having a grievance, and I certainly understand protest, and certainly things could be better for them. But what really gets my goat, sir, is why are they tearing down their own community?" You'll find it, guaranteed. Now, flash forward to the 1992 Rodney King riots. You will find the same piece of tape. I shit you not. The same white dude. They might have even found a relative of the original dude and just, hey.
They cloned him. They kept him in a vat and they reeled him out.
Right. Here's a relative. We know he's going to say the right thing. And there he is. It's some white dude from somewhere else in LA going, I totally, I'm not a racist, and I listen to hip hop, and you know what I mean? And I understand that, like, people are treated badly, but what I don't understand is, like, why would you tear down your own homes and your own community? It seems counterproductive. And here we are now, and it's happened again. Exactly the same way. Everyone knows the Rodney King riot started because somebody was intrepid enough to film the cops beating the shit out of a black man for no reason other than their sadistic desire to do that to black people. And South Central LA erupted in riots. There were numerous riots in other cities This is on a scale that is completely different from either of those riots.
No, this is pretty fucking magical, to be perfectly honest. It's wild to be living through history in so many different ways, between coronavirus, you know, a global pandemic, and this. But I guess 30 years older and no more wise, because we're still asking the same questions.
Right. I'm just like, but I'm also, you know, filled with trepidation. And the trepidation in me comes from my natural bent towards pessimism. I feel like at some point, you know, to quote from Hunter S. Thompson, the wave is going to break and roll back, and someday we're all going to be able to stand and remember like that time when shit could have jumped off, things could have gotten changed, the stink of all of this nonsense that the capitalistic system makes people at its bottom rungs go through got so gross that just everybody rose up. I want that with every fucking fiber of my being. Believe me. Do I believe it's going to happen, especially now over this? I don't know.
Oh, we're getting closer, aren't we?
I want to, dude. I want to, but there's a little pessimistic part of me that I pay very close attention to because it's guided me well in the past.
That's the oh, no, please.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll shut up.
No, I interrupted. Go ahead. Yeah.
That voice says, eventually people are going to get bored of this. The Karens are going to go back to Starbucks. The dads are going to go back to their jobs that they hate. The kids are going to go back to their fucking Fortnite. And this is just going to be one of those little footnotes in history that we all talk about anecdotally, you know, like it could have happened. Something like that might happen again. You know, I just don't want that.
Can
yeah, go ahead.
Please, can I red pill you on dialectic materialism by chance? That's what I've been told prior to talking about you, because I am familiar with your content to an extent. I've seen the Deep Fried podcast before, but
sure.
I have been informed that you are what we call in the political community a doomer, and I am very excited to talk about this with you. I think my perky youthful optimism will shine through this conversation, at least to the best of my ability.
I right at the beginning there, I kind of take umbrage with the doomer label. I see it a lot, and I understand why I'm kind of lumped in with that. But I think that I am insanely optimistic in terms of what it is that my ideology is aimed towards. The vision that I have for society, for a farther future human society, is so wildly optimistic that I feel like calling me a doomer kind of just relegates me in a lot of people's minds to a dude that's like, well, I give up. It all fucking sucks anyway, and it's all going to shit. And I might as well just, you know, oh well, it's too late now.
But that makes sense, though. The greatest, not doomerism, what's a better term than pessimism, is always going to be exhibited by people who have the greatest hopes for society. There's a reason why all these wine moms and Karens aren't doomers, or aren't even close to doomers, because when the incremental change you're looking for is as close as getting the next Obama in, there's always a chance of your goals being realized. It's genuine hope for the future that facilitates that kind of pessimism.
There is a quote that I'm probably going to butcher, but that I love, and I can't even attribute it properly because I can't remember the name of the person that said it. So maybe I don't love it as much as I say I do. But the quote is this, paraphrased: "The optimist believes that we live in the best of all possible worlds, and the pessimist fears that that's true." So I believe that in pessimism, there is an inherent optimism. There's an old meme, and there's a little truth to the meme, that inside every pessimist is a disappointed optimist. And I will fully admit to that. My end game is wildly optimistic because I have so much motherfucking faith in humanity. I see so much potential in this species, and I have my entire fucking life. And if we can get out from under the yoke for long enough to have that creative renaissance, that explosion that would happen, if people weren't yoked to this stupid idea that you have to pay out the ass just to live and eat. This idea, see, I'm called lazy because I envision a world like that where people don't have to get up and slog and go to work. By the way, which I did for 20 years of my 40-year lifespan. I worked normal jobs, 40 to 60 hours a week on my feet, busting my ass, customer service bullshit. And I was lucky because I had enough money to get by. I could go get a loaf of bread. I got to carry my whiteness around with me. So I did, way less chance of getting hassled by the cops, even though I look like a dirty hippie. But you know what? I believe we can do better. And that's why I argue so passionately with people. And that's why I believe so deeply what I believe. It springs from an inherent belief that humanity is capable of doing crazy motherfucking shit, Vosh. Crazy shit. Shit that would blow your fucking mind. Like, imagine this, and then I'll shut up and let you talk for a second. Imagine for one moment, Vosh, a world where it's like, where do I want to live? I've always wanted to live right near a white sand beach. What's the process? I just go. I show up at the white sand beachy area, and there's this beautiful complex that I can choose any apartment in that I like. And it's mine. And if the one that I think is really primo is taken, I can put my name on a list. And when it's vacated, because that person decided they wanted to change a venue, guess who gets to live in it? And guess what it costs me? Nothing but the time to travel there. Imagine that world for a second, because that might seem fanciful, but that's possible. That is fucking possible. That's what I believe. That's where my passion springs forth from. And if I'm wrong for that, if I'm pessimistic for that, for looking at what we've got now and going, ugh, fuck. What are we living in? What are we dealing with? If that makes me a fucking doomer, then I'll accept the label.
It may well. I guess the label really comes down to the degree to which you believe action can move us from point A to point B. And I have to ask, are you a socialist? What political labels do you adhere to?
This is a tough question for me, and I'm sorry, and I'm really not trying to be obtuse or anything in having this. Mm-hmm. I don't really ascribe myself to any. I used to call myself a democratic socialist way back when, before it was cool. Back in like 2008, 2009, I was on the record here on YouTube as a Dem socialist. So I've been down that road. I don't consider myself such anymore. I really don't consider myself anything at this point. Now, maybe there's a label for me and I'm willing to accept it, but I really try to think outside of that. Not to sound all edgy and cool. I'm too fucking cool for labels, Vosh. Like, you want to take PaulsEgo and force him into this little mold of a label, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to be that. I just don't really find myself agreeing with a lot of the different groups and splinters out on the left. I'm clearly a leftist. I'm clearly to the left of most people. Where I fit on that spectrum, I kind of leave it up to other people to decide that, because I don't care.
That's all right.
I'm on the side of humanity, and I'm on the side of the place that we live. I'm on the side of the planet we live on. What does that make me?
We can talk about specific policies, and after that, me and my community can draw straws to figure out what we think best applies to you. Because right now they're guessing post-left anarchist, but that
okay.
Yeah, that doesn't matter too much. You want the decommodification of housing. You want the decommodification of human necessities like food.
I want the elimination of capital. Period.
Then we go then we want further than that. Yeah. Then we want the abolition of the commodity form. So it's very safe to say that you are absolutely a socialist in one form or another. With that being said, with these protests, what are you worried about? We are, at this moment, at least, closer than we ever have been in the history of this country to real revolutionary change with regards, at the very least, to the relationship between
I'm still here. Sorry if my camera dropped. It'll be back up in just a second.
That's
I'm
okay.
listening.
In the meantime, it's just two me's on my screen, which I don't mind. I like looking at myself. I think that it's very important. Here, let me think. How do I phrase this exactly? One of the greatest concerns that I have had, I guess, in being a leftist online is translating the things I believe in to the painful, agonizing, incremental steps that it takes to work towards those positions. There are a lot of leftists online, I believe the Leninists call them derivatively the leftcoms, who are so obsessed with ideological purity that they don't really participate meaningfully in any of the systems by which you change the world. And I've tried to distance myself a little bit from that. It's very easy, I think, to sit here and go like, we need a revolution, you know, this and that. But the actual steps from A to B, I think, are the bloody part. And I think what's happening right now, these protests, are as close as we've gotten in a really long time. Because even though these aren't explicitly socialist protests, these are fundamentally challenges to state power, and the power vacuum left in their absence is something that we can capitulate on, or I'm sorry, that we can capitalize on, assuming that we can find some agreement with the other people who are protesting. I'm very excited to see how that comes along.
I agree. We have no disagreement there. I tried to explain the trepidation that I feel about these protests earlier. And it has nothing to do with pearl clutching the loss of a target or the destruction of a low-income house. I'm not on that team. I'm fully on team fuck shit up. You know, I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but
it's a side.
Yeah. And I'm excited about the prospect of that. And you know what, dude? I hate to fucking say this because I know people have suffered for this, and I hope they don't take it the wrong way. I'm excited by COVID-19. Because I think that COVID-19 has added to this. I think that had COVID not happened and had we not been at the ass end of this quarantine, by the way, we should all be quarantined still. Mm-hmm. But had we not, in a lot of places that are having these riots, been at the ass end of quarantine, feeling that frustration of being abandoned by this government that we've all entered into this fucking sacred compact with that's supposed to take care of us. And they ask us, stay home. And they give us breadcrumbs and gruel to eat,
if even
if that.
Do right, you consider, if you're lucky. I know you don't like labels. I assume you're familiar with the term accelerationism.
I've been called an accelerationist, and I have kind of used that label to describe myself before. It's not something that I'm totally sold on, but I do think it is actually part of my ideology. So
yeah, can I talk about that for a second, if I may?
Please do.
Yeah.
Please do.
So accelerationism gets a bad rap in a lot of leftist communities because it's considered to be kind of the opposite of harm reduction. Like, you do blank, you do this, and you know, people suffer in the meantime, but hey, maybe it brings about better change. But I actually read some writings of Marx. I think it was transcripts from a speech he gave to a workers' union or workers' rally at some point somewhere in Germany. But whatever the case may be, the transcription, as I understood it, was effectively distinguishing between political and economic accelerationism. That political accelerationism, the process of voting for the more reactionary candidate or abstaining from voting, is usually not that effective because all it does is put people in power who are more capable of effectively resisting direct action. But with regards to economic accelerationism, like all the distrust that's been sown in the government by the COVID-19 crisis, or the riots, which are non-electoral in nature, but nonetheless heighten the antagonism between the state and the people, these things bring people to a position where they're more willing than ever to accept radical changes at the expense of the trust in the status quo. Nobody really trusts the status quo right now, or at least probably fewer people than ever before in American history. I would imagine.
Even the people that have been deluded into thinking they trust it don't trust it. You know what I mean?
Kyle Kalinske, just the other day, Kyle Kalinske, God bless him, finally tweeted out that he recognizes there is the distinction between Biden and Trump. And if that doesn't tell you how heightened things are getting at this moment, I don't know what does. If even he will acquiesce on that point.
That is pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So I understand you and Kyle have kind of a pretty big rift in that you are a harm reduction. Now, if I mislabel you, please just stop me and correct me, okay?
No, go ahead.
Because I'm not. I am probably about as familiar with your content as you are mine. I'm no Vosh expert, but especially since we've been in talks to talk, I've spent some time watching and listening to what you do.
Fuck yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I enjoy myself, by the way. I really liked the conversation that you had with TJ in particular, but I know I have a bias there. TJ's a good friend of mine.
It was also one of my favorite conversations I've ever had in this channel. It was just a really good conversation. So yeah, no, I agree.
It was fantastic. Fuck now. This is the stoner problem. I started sucking your dick, and now I can't remember what I was talking about.
That was acceleration. Kyle Kalinske, the rift between him and I.
Kyle. Okay, so the difference, right? So he is a Bernie or buster. He's a guy that says, look, the establishment has fucked Bernie over twice now, and I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to take the Hillary Clinton devil's bargain again, and that's basically what I'm being offered with Joe Biden. I'm going to vote down ticket, or I'm going to vote green. And you are a harm reductionist, riding with Biden kind of guy, right? You're like, look, Biden sucks, but he's better than Trump. We have a better chance of preserving things like Roe v. Wade and maybe starting to switch the balance on the Supreme Court. So let's swallow the fucking poison pill here and elect the doddering old, centrist Republican.
Yeah, it's a harm reduction thing. I also believe that voting for Biden, if he wins, will bring about a greater likelihood of reaching material conditions, which will allow for socialist reform.
Okay. Fair enough. So I think I'm starting to see the shape of any disagreement we may have on tactics here. I may be wrong, but I think that I can kind of give a theory.
Go for
it. And this is tough for me because I know people don't like it because I don't really like this position either. Not yet. I've held it for quite some time, but it's always bothered me a little bit. Maybe you can help me find out why.
Sure.
I think one of the reasons it bothers me is because it's a fundamentally neoconservative idea, and it was used, I believe, in 2001 to justify an expansion of presidential power and an expansion of military adventurism. It's this idea that in order for the populace to accept radical change, which when we're talking about 2001, the radical change that we were prepared to accept was a vast loss of a lot of our civil liberties and rights to privacy, right? Which disappeared during that time. We're being prepped to accept, a new kind of change at this point. And I have a feeling that these riots and these things that we're talking about have a chance to make that positive change for the first time in a very fucking long time. I don't feel like Biden does. I feel like a vote for Biden, yes, it is a harm reductionist vote here in the United States. It is. Trans people will probably be better. In fact, there's no probably about it. I'll stop. Trans people will be better off under a Joe Biden administration than a continued Trump administration. LGBTQIA. I'm sorry, I don't know all the letters yet. I'm trying.
That was enough. It was a good number of letters.
Okay. All of the people that are under that banner, I myself am one of them. So I should know the letters, but they're going to be better off under Biden. There's no contention here. But there are a lot of people who are not going to be better off under Joe Biden. And we never do anything for those people. And I'm talking about people in the third world whose resources we strip mine out from underneath them, who work in our factories, who are increasingly asked to do the same kind of work that we do on these worker visa programs, and then shipped back to their completely bombed out, economically devastated places with barely enough money to get by on. Basically, third world slaves. There are people, and I'm sure the people in your audience know this. I'm not telling them anything that they don't know. There are people that live, I'm not talking about living near it. They live in garbage dumps in Ghana. And their life is they wake up in the morning and they get out of their hut, which they've built from scrap from the garbage dump they live in. And they walk around the hills and they dig through garbage and find salvage, and they sell it for just enough money to put bread in their mouths. This is a direct result of American and more broadly Western capitalism. And if it's not addressed, and it won't be addressed by Joe Biden because he's going to be sucking the dick of every corporate cunt that walks through his door, and you know that to be true. He's going to blow them all. Those people get no relief from Joe Biden. And those people matter to me. And those people can't wait. And the earth, I don't mean to gish gallop you here. I'm not trying to do that. But the earth itself, I feel like we're on a clock, my dude. The earth itself can't wait through another Joe Biden capitulating, fucking centrist ass, weak ass, limp wristed DNC liberal fucking doing nothing. The woods are on fire. The oceans are becoming acidic.
And eventually we'll also be on fire.
We're living in the midst of a fourth mass extinction event. This is not even a controversy amongst biologists right now. There's no time. We need to act now, and Joe Biden ain't it. And I want to be on the side of life. I want to be on the side of human beings that didn't just luck out and get born in California like you and I did. Or I don't know. I heard you were a California guy. Are you a California guy?
I'm up in Seattle now, but yeah, I spent most of my life in California.
Okay, West Coast guy.
Yeah. Nice
Lucky
over here.
dude.
Seattle gets real hot in the summers now, and none of these houses have AC though. So
see, I'm
suffering.
I'm from Fresno, California, where it's 120 degrees in the summer. So I know the heat. And let me tell you something. When I was a kid in the 80s, it was 92 in the summer. We don't got time. We don't have time for another weak ass fucking liberal. And for me to sign my name under his name is not only an implicit fucking support of the nothing that he's going to do on all of those subjects, but also an implicit support of the system that allows us to go generation to generation with no change on these fronts. That's why I can't do it.
I think I have enough points written down. Do you mind if we go through these?
Please, let's.
Okay. So, here, hold on. Let me get a notes app here. Okay, hold on. Just give me 1 second to make sure these are organized properly.
No worries. Take all the time you need. No rush here.
Okay, so, all right, I'm going to, I guess, treat this as I would, I guess not a debate, but I'm interested in these points, and I want to go through them one by one so we can sort of isolate the particular positions we disagree on. So,
okay.
If we're speaking specifically with regards to domestic policy, you and I are both in agreement that Biden is a harm reduction vote.
Yes.
It seems fairly, it's a fairly, anyone who denies that point, I think Kyle Kalinske did for a time.
If you're limiting it to domestic policy, then yes. If you're limiting it to the United States, totally. And, some of our close allies, then yes. He's
our engagement, with I guess, the developed world. There are some people who contend this, like, for example, Kyle Kalinske, I know, does this whole, like, Biden and Trump are the same thing. And while I acknowledge, of course, the fact that the Overton window limits discourse in our electoral system to a very thin neoliberal line, though Trump perhaps represents a departure from that line, though not in a good way. There are definitely a difference between the two. My question for you is, just if we're doing utilitarian calculus on this, which I always do, with regards to the third world, though I cannot make the argument necessarily that Biden would be better for the developing world than Trump, I don't know, can you make an argument that he is worse for the developing world, or only that it means no change to the status quo?
I would be way more comfortable. I don't think I would make an argument that Biden would somehow be worse for the developing world.
Okay. I think I would agree with that.
I do think I would feel very comfortable making the argument that Biden will likely result in a no change status quo. I mean, he, of course, was vice president during the Obama administration when drone strikes went through the roof. I think brown people that don't live in America, especially those that live in the Middle Eastern region on this planet, and maybe some of them that live in the South American region of this planet, ought to be really scared that Joe Biden is about to be their president, because we know he loves some drone strikes, indirect military intervention. He's got a big fucking boner for it. No matter what he says publicly, we watched him preside over it silently as fucking Barack Obama's VP. We watched him support it.
So my main contention here would be, and this is all speculative, but it seems like everything bad the Obama administration has done has been ramped up under Trump. From what's going on in Yemen to the ramping up of drone strikes to, with regards to foreign policy, his incendiary aggression against the state of Iran, his support for an assassination attempt on Maduro, and his taking the side of the fascists in Bolivia, him pulling out of the Rojava region. It seems to me, and it's difficult to say, of course, because we're kind of making like a predictive statement here. No politician like platforms themselves on, I'll declare war on this or what have you. I have a feeling, I'm not of the opinion that Biden is more inclined towards foreign aggression than Trump is. I will acknowledge they're identical when it comes to the propagation of foreign capital. That's not,
okay.
That I can't possibly make an argument Biden will be better.
I'm glad, because if we had to argue that, this would be a disheartening conversation indeed. So I'm glad we're on the same page there.
Yeah, but you have that plus like Trump leaving the WHO. It seems like there are a lot of foreign points that Trump is actively worse on than what I would expect from a Biden presidency. One of the main reasons why Obama was able to get away with the stuff that he did was because there wasn't really a progressive wing of the Democratic Party at the time that was leaning public pressure against him. Whereas that's not the case now with the Justice Dems. My hope would be that even if Biden is the same dipshit that he was back then, which I can only assume is the case, that the existence of a more radical left wing within the Democratic Party would be able to leverage public opinion against any drone strikes or foreign intervention they engage in, which I think will happen because AOC, Ilhan, these are very popular politicians with a lot of social media outreach. They have a lot of sway within the Democratic Party, and Biden has made concessions to them and appointed them respectively to climate change related and like foreign policy related councils, giving them a lot of sway in what America does. I have a feeling they'll be able to rein him in, at least keep him from being as bad as Trump. I would argue probably a fair bit better.
And this is going to kind of dip into conspiracy theory territory. So forgive me one moment for a little departure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Joe Biden is all there anymore. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to make a diagnosis of Joe Biden. But if somebody were to do a thorough examination of Joe Biden and determine that he was suffering from early onset frontotemporal dementia, I would not be shocked by that. He has lost over the years his ability to speak extemporaneously to a large extent. He struggles. He's prone to outbursts in public, all of which, were he diagnosed with some kind of degenerative old age related brain disease, would be indicative of that. He has these outbursts. He says weird things. He gets really angry at people for seemingly no reason, like that fat guy that he just started calling fat. You remember? He was like, listen, fat.
I related to him. It was that outburst felt like a YouTube moment right there. Heated politician.
It was
moment.
Great. I can do more push-ups than you. That's it. And every time that happens to Joe, I have this picture of old men that I've known sitting in rocking chairs on the front porch at, little tense conversations with these guys who aren't quite there anymore, but they're still passionate. And I'm not trying to be ageist here and shit. I'm just saying, I think we're already dealing with that in Trump. I think Trump too is cognitively impaired.
Yeah, Trump is pretty far gone. Anytime he tries to hold himself in public, like that. Did you see the video of him trying to hold up the Bible? Holy shit! He couldn't figure, in 3D space, he couldn't figure out its relationship to the camera positionally. It was really weird.
Insane.
Yeah,
it was fucking insane. And there are tons of those moments. I actually follow this little conspiracy dude on Twitter that kind of reposts dementia stuff for Trump. Like, here's proof that he's got dementia. Here's another thing. And I'm, once again, I'm no doctor. I ain't saying he has it, but man, dude, he does some weird fucking shit when he's in public.
But of what relevance is that to the points with regards to foreign policy?
I'm sorry. It was. You're right. The point I was trying to make is we don't even know if the Biden that is elected at this point is going to be the Biden that we get. And in a year's time, if he is suffering from some sort of degenerative brain disease, which is totally plausible, he may be way more impulsive. He may be just like Trump. There's a chance that he gets just as indignant and angry and lost as Trump is now.
Possibly. Sorry, my apologies.
One of the things that people seem to be uncomfortable talking about on the left is that we're about to have, for the third election cycle in a row, the oldest president ever, no matter who gets elected. Which, once again, I'm not trying to be ageist. I think it's a point of concern that the people that we're asking to do the most stressful fucking job in the world are all septuagenarians and pushing 80.
I don't disagree with that. We kind of bear the cross for that as well, because I imagine you were at least somewhat supportive of Bernie.
Yes.
I don't disagree with the mental decline point. I don't exactly have a tremendous amount of faith in Biden's cognitive abilities. My only argument would be Trump is already this bad. Trump is already an impulsive, he lies about everything. 2/3 of the things he says are factually incorrect. I think some massive meta study was done on every the prescriptive statement or descriptive statement that he's made over the course of his presidency. I think the worst case scenario for Biden's mental decline would be putting him at or around Trump. but Trump is still declining. He's worse now than he was in 2016. So with regards to the third world points, I agree that there is always the possibility that Biden will get worse, and I acknowledge that. But given that Trump is already terrible and Trump has a history of not using his administration, but rather just acts through executive action, whereas Biden has more of a history of collaborating with the Democratic Party and deferring people towards congressional committees that he forms or appoints people to, I think that even if their level of cognitive decline was equivalent, and that's an if, there's still a greater likelihood of Biden's administration being able to step up to help to bolster his soup brain, his melting, pink wrinkles.
I concede to the points as presented. I don't have a problem with any of that. I concede that we'd likely be better off with Biden in all of those positions. I have no problem conceding that.
Okay.
And I think you're right. I think Trump's farther down the road of horrible end of life decline, and Biden's probably going to surround himself with people who are a little more liberal minded, though also very corporatist minded, which puts not just a bad taste in my mouth, it puts a disgusting taste in my mouth. Like,
oh, I mean, I fucking hate Biden. I can't stand the DNC. None of my endorsements are moral. This is like the cold utilitarian calculus of somebody who is very unhappy with the choices that he has to make.
Yeah.
But that's sometimes all we get. Do you mind if I run through a few more?
Please.
So with regard to the climate change thing, there are kind of 2 points to be made here, one of which I have to concede, and one of which, but I'll address later, and one of which I think is fairly upfront. With regards to just on the books policy, Biden is objectively better than Trump when it comes to climate change. He's acknowledged the importance of the sentiment of the Green New Deal and appointed many people, including the writer of the Green New Deal and AOC, to a climate action panel. I can't say this will definitely do something good. I mean, it's impossible for me to know the extent to which this will improve the world, but Trump barely acknowledges the existence of climate change. I mean, I would take tepid recognition and perhaps like some civic investment over the continued debate over whether or not it actually exists. But with that being said, and I do acknowledge this, I don't think anything he can do will be anywhere near enough. I don't think he can commit to change that is necessary.
Okay. Yeah, I understand the position. If you have more, I'm sorry to butt in. If you had more, please go ahead.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that ultimately is the question that we arrive at too, which is because climate change is probably the greatest existential threat that we face right now. In the face of everything else, it honestly seems everything else seems kind of paltry. With regards to climate change, my argument has always been this: electorally, I don't think there's anything that we can do to fix it because, unfortunately, the investments necessary to meaningfully address climate change would not only require global action, it would require a massive shortage of existing capital infrastructure, the destruction of industries that have hands deep into our government, and replacing it with infrastructure that is at this time like not anywhere near as profitable as like fracking could be. Like it would, like capitalism isn't something, it can't mobilize itself to address problems like this. But my argument would be the chances are far greater of revolutionary change with Biden's failure than with Trump's failure. Because if the Democrats, the people in this country who do care about climate change, which I imagine probably like 40 to 60% of the population, we get another Trump term, this whole time everyone's going to be crossing their fingers, please God, after Trump is done, anyone, any Democrat, anyone who's blue. But if Biden goes up there, and we still don't have any meaningful solution to climate change after his term, the Democratic voters now have to acknowledge the fact that it's not just putting someone blue in office that matters, it's putting the right blue person in office. You can't just acquiesce to the Democratic Party, you have to go further. You have to show people that the hopes they've relied on won't work before they'll turn to more radical solutions. Whereas if you just let them have another Trump presidency, they'll think like, well, just please God, just any Democrat, you know? Their hopes need to die before they move further left. And that's why Bernie was so successful after 8 years of Obama. The dejected progressives who saw his hope and change movement turn into another neoliberal facade were looking for something more severe after he was done. Unfortunately, it didn't work out.
Now, can I butt in for a second and ask a clarifying
that was
question?
about...
Yeah. Their hopes need to die. You and I agree. Mm-hmm. Do you think their hope is really going to die, though, by just shuffling another stuffed suit into a position electorally and relying on, here's a little liberal progress on social issues that are constantly used as wedge issues, to divide man from man, and to prevent us from developing any kind of sense of commonality. Like, do you believe that people need to lose their hope? Because I do. But I believe that things are going to have to go a lot farther than the election of a Donald Trump for another 4 years for people to really genuinely lose their hope.
Well, I don't hope
for what I'm talking about, and I don't relish the thought of it. But I think shit is going to have to fucking collapse for people to really lose hope and understand who the villain is in this.
I agree, but I think the right system needs to collapse. If the Trump system collapses, there are a lot of wine moms on Twitter who are just going to go like, if only we had Hillary. But if we see the DNC fail the people who need their help, I think we're in a position to greater address their lost hopes. And I know that the material conditions are heightening rapidly as well. I mean, between climate change, COVID-19, the riots that are going on right now, I don't think Biden is just going to give us another Obama term, another 4 to 8 quiet years of peaceful neoliberalism, at least domestically. I think things are going to be bloody and violent pretty much the entire length of his presidency. And after that point, I do think a lot of Democrats are going to recognize the DNC is not the vessel of their salvation.
And I mean no disrespect by this, if the type of collapse that I'm talking about happens and that I envision in my mind happens, there will be no more wine moms from Twitter. They will not survive it.
How severe do you think just to clarify, how severe do you think it'll need to be?
I think we're talking global economic collapse, which is inevitable, by the way. I believe that as well, and you can challenge me on that. I believe that we have been living under a system where capitalism has created a giant casino for itself at the expense of everybody. And they're using, in addition to tons of fiat currency that gets moved around, they're using our labor to sustain it. We get to go to work and they get to go to the casino. And here's the problem with casinos. Now, I'm a very simple thinker. I'm not a real smart guy. I didn't do a lot of college. I haven't read every goddamn philosopher under the sun, but I know a little bit about casinos. Eventually, you motherfucking lose. And if you play too much and too heavily, you bust right the fuck out. And when that happens, we're not just talking about, we're going to have to tighten up our belts, guys. It might be a while until DoorDash is available. I'm talking about people are going to be going ape shit in the streets, breaking into each other's houses to steal water and food and places. There's going to be a societal breakdown. We're on the razor's edge of that right now. There's this thin line that separates humanity from the beast. I believe that. That's a philosopher. Can't remember which one. There's
not Hegel. What was his name? Hobbes?
Yeah,
some pessimist during the Enlightenment times. But
yes. And I believe that. I genuinely do. I think that when the food becomes unavailable, we're going to turn on one another. We might try and help each other at first, but when the shit really hits the fan and those supplies run out, it's going to be dog eat dog. A lot of people are going to die. There's a lot of guns in this country. I mean, fuck.
A lot, yeah.
But at the end of that, there's a possibility for real systemic fucking change. There's a possibility that the people that survive that, which there will be a few, I don't think it's going to go be to a man unless the nukes fly. Then, you know what I mean? We might be.
I don't
disagree.
A different tune. Do you mind if I outline how I kind of imagine this is going to go, at least in an ideal world?
Sure.
I don't disagree with you on the global economic collapse. It seems to be a pretty inevitable component of capitalism. 2008 was pretty fucking bad, but it seems like something worse might be coming on the horizon. My opinion has been that it's always going to sort of flow downstream from climate refugees, as certain parts of Latin America, Central America, Southeast Asia, and even the Florida Peninsula become uninhabitable due to rising sea levels. There are going to be more and more migrants. Europe has a population of about 1 billion people, and it took a couple million refugees to turn that entire continent upside down. Imagine hundreds of millions of people having to spread out across the world just to avoid drowning. I think that an economic collapse eventually is inevitable. But my concern is, if that collapse takes place under the wrong ideological conditions, it will not be a socialist society which emerges from the rubble. In fact, as if we look at Europe right now, it seems much more likely to me that a fascist society would take precedence, especially with migrants who are A, brown, mostly, and B, don't speak our language, battering down the hatches of our country. The likelihood of people adopting some sort of revolutionary, like leftist solution to this seems far less likely to me than people just locking off the borders, creating an ethno-state, and trying to build up national and state power, like as a way of resisting the forces of the outside world.
Now, when it comes to migrants, the biggest group there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the biggest group there is Hispanic migrants.
Yeah, they'd be, in Southeast Asia. We'd probably get mostly Hispanic migrants. Yeah.
Sure. What is it that you fear? Because you use some pretty strong rhetoric about migrants battering down our doors.
Oh, wait. I'm totally fine with them coming in. Migrants are totally...
Okay.
I'm sorry. My language may have been unclear, and I apologize for that. I'm totally okay. I want borders abolished. I think they're fine. I think that's how it'll be interpreted by the media of our country.
Sorry.
Yeah. So just to clarify, my apologies. No. Very, very fine. One generation after, like, refugees, like, settle in, they become, like, economically productive. Their crime rates tend to be lower on average. Like, I don't care. They're good.
Understood.
But yeah, with regards to this, my main concern is that I want to facilitate the best ideological conditions prior to this collapse possible. So my goal would be we try to move the electorate of this country in a position where we eventually get a Bernie Sanders type in office. I think that's as far as we can go electorally within capitalism. I don't think we can go farther than that. I don't think there's any way to peacefully or legislatively seize the means of production. There'd be a revolution before that happens. But if we get people's minds in the right place, if we incline people towards the right type of ideological dispositions prior to this tremendous collapse, I think we might be the ones to win out after the dust is cleared, the rubble is settled. That's my concern. And my worry is that from precedent, it seems like putting people like Donald Trump in office don't empower the left, they empower the right. Putting people
Isn't that on us, though? Isn't that on us to be loud and to be smarter? Because here's the thing, dude. I want to tell you something. I'm sitting over here smiling during that last part of your speech. People that follow me will know that just a few days ago, I said something that was almost indistinguishable from that. My entire ideology is oriented towards trying to engender this type of thinking in more people so that when the shit hits the fan, there's a chance that those people are there. They come through it and they go, here was the problem. Here was the toxic, disgusting, vampiric system that was the old paradigm that leached life from the working man, that made our lives horrible. And we still have all its machinery, if they're lucky. We still have a lot of its machinery. We have all its books, all its knowledge. And we can do something different. We can build this a better way. That is what I am oriented towards. That's why I spend so much fucking time talking about this. So if that's true of you, which I think it is from what I just listened to, then we are on the same page.
Yeah.
The divide between us is almost meaningless at that point, if that's the case.
Depends on where our votes go. Because I think the best way of achieving that outcome is to have Biden in office and then spend the next 4 years bullying the ever-living shit out of him. Sometimes I dream about it. I wake up with soiled underwear because I imagine 4 entire years where I get to, along with my comrades, ruthlessly bully the Biden administration. Right now, with Trump, Trump has empowered the far right. His approval ratings are through the roof, with the Republican Party at least. And the left in this country can't do anything to Trump. We can't influence him in any way, shape, or form. Why would he listen to us? We're not his constituency. But with Biden, who has already been making plenty of concessions to Bernie, allowed him to keep delegates. By the way, guys, Bernie is currently really, really close to reaching the delegate threshold that he needs to force more concessions during the Milwaukee DNC convention. If you motherfuckers are in states that haven't done your Democratic primaries yet, make sure to vote for Bernie Sanders, okay? It's the primaries, not the fucking main election. Anyway, we do all this. We get as many concessions out of that fucker as possible, and no matter how many we take, we still complain. And we get the DNC as riled up and as discontented as possible with the establishment, with people like Pelosi, with people like with Biden, and eventually we mobilize that electoral energy towards enfranchising the population, fixing the gerrymandering, trying to re-enfranchise like felons, trying to get more voting booths in like historically poor or POC communities. And all of this is part of a steamroll that we can engage in to take back the true majority of the country. A third of the country is Republican. We, or people too apathetic to vote, represent the majority by a vast amount. And all it takes is 1 or 2 good election cycles for us to make the Republican Party irrelevant on a federal level. And if we do that, we get reign until that revolution comes. And that's what I hope for.
I want to say that I don't disagree with your methods, and I really don't disagree with your position, man. And like I told you, I think one of our first communications was that I'm not here to tell you don't vote. Like, that's really not my message. I'm not going to vote. I'm willing to defend why, but I'm really not that guy trying to stand in front of you at the polls and go, stop doing this. I have my reasons, and I think that they're perfectly reasonable, and we can go through those. But there's almost a sadness that hangs over when I hear, and I don't mean to talk to you like I'm your grandpa or something, but a bright, vibrant young dude like you with a good brain in his head and, a lot of really great ideas and a passionate following around him, man. There's excitement around that, but there's a sadness to me hearing you talk like that, because I'm telling you, I was you. And I'm not trying to be like, hey, Sonny, I know everything about your life, but I was really like you back when I called myself a democratic socialist. I was very active, very fiery, very confrontational. I talked to anybody about anything. I'm so sure I was right, so completely and utterly sure of myself. And these are all good things about you. It's what makes Vosh Vosh as far as I can see. And it's great.
I'm an excitable kind of guy.
Yes, and that's a good thing. No. Stay excitable no matter what the fuck happens. Don't let that die, because when that dies, you may as well just pull the dirt in on top of yourself. You know what I mean? But here's the thing. I'm sad because I see that energy that you have, and I see the energy in your fucking community too. And I look at that and I go, fuck, look at all these leftist people that are sick of this fucking oppressive system. Look at this. Look at all these young folks that are like, fuck this system, man. Yeah. And so much of that energy, Vosh, when you take this riding with Biden position, is aimed at a vote that's ultimately going to preserve the status quo. And here's what I think in my mind. I think, what if that same energy that Vosh has on his channel right now, that same youthfulness, that same righteous indignation, what if that was aimed at, fuck, this isn't working. This can't be changed from within. We don't have the money. We're not trillionaires. We can't buy the politicians. It's been shown time and time again that when we get a candidate that might make some substantive changes, really radical substantive changes, they scuttle him over and over again. Check out. Stop pouring that energy into this fucking electoral cycle that, let me tell you, it's been disappointing young men like you since before I was born. Young men like you, and I'm not trying to talk down to you, dude. It's just we're just of different ages, and I feel
that's okay. I'm a Zoomer. Don't worry. I know what I am.
I feel a fucking kinship with you though, because you really do remind me of myself in a lot of ways, like politically speaking and passion speaking. And so, if I could go back and tell myself something, it's that the answer to all these problems that are looming, these horrifying fucking problems that to list them just makes me sick to my stomach. The fucking earth, the racial tension that's about to boil over and explode in this country, rightfully so. The continued degradation of women in society at large, all of this horrifying blood, the fucking camps with little Mexican kids in them and little Hispanic children. And it goes all over me, dude. I get fucking emotional just talking about it. And that's just half the shit going on. Pour that energy towards tearing this motherfucker down. Let the stink of it rise so fucking high that the average person loses faith in that system. Because perpetuating this system, that at the end of it, no matter who you vote for, whether it's Bernie, if you're lucky enough to get him, or Biden, the money is still being shuffled right out the back door. The rich are getting richer. The poor are getting fucked over and out. It's been that way since the institution of fucking feudalism and probably before. And here it is again with a brand new name and a shiny new branding. That's the fucking focus, man. This system supports that. And that's why I can't, in good conscience, Vosh, walk into a voting booth and sign my motherfucking name. The only thing I got that's mine, my person, my agency as a human fucking being that lives on this planet, and look at the name Joe Biden, who I know would sell his grandmother's pussy up the river for a buffalo nickel, and sign my fucking name under it, man. I can't do it. I'm sorry to get worked up. I'm sorry to get passionate and shit. I'm not trying to yell at you.
Oh, I'm not impugning. I've just written down my my points for response. It's all utilitarian calculus to me. I don't take any of this personally. Would you mind if I responded?
Please do.
Yeah. So one of the main contentions that I have with this, I guess, framing of electoralism is the idea that there is, in any way, shape, or form, like a mutually exclusive nature to voting and direct action. Because there just isn't. Voting takes virtually no energy. I mean, depending on where you live, it can be a few hours, like, lining up or what have you. But when it comes to, like, the actual concession that you are making as an individual, as opposed to what energy you could direct towards direct action, like that, it just doesn't take anything from you. I guess it's an annoying evening, or you can do mail-in. I mean, then it really is just about nothing. But I don't think you lose anything by voting. So you could make the argument, though, and I think your argument is more of like an essentialist one, like your endorsement fundamentally of the system. My main issue, ultimately, is that not voting is the ultimate endorsement of the system. There are a fuck ton of people in this country who do not vote, and they have beget no revolutionary change, no challenge to the status quo, nothing. They are the ultimately the sheep over which the tide washes over. And while many of them, their lack of voting is for very legitimate frustration or very legitimate disenfranchisement from the system, I'm not going to make fun of them for that. I still ultimately think what they do does harm. And I know that because one of the greatest obstacles to bringing about change in this country is the fact that a huge number of the people in this country don't vote. They don't participate. They don't care. They don't bother with it. But these people aren't like revolutionary actors. They're the opposite of it. They're the ones who are most disempowered. But the ultimate...
I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but I feel like I want to respond to something here.
You may.
This argument, and I'm sorry to do that. I'm not trying to be antagonistic. This argument that, oh man, I'm so fucking familiar with it. This... When you don't vote, that's the ultimate endorsement of the system. I just don't fucking buy it, man. It's so reductive, and I'm not personally offended by it. I don't get that way in conversations like we're having. You have a different position than me, but I'm just telling you, as a whole, to take the people that don't vote in this country and to reduce them to people who are lazy, who don't have time to get an absentee ballot or just don't want to fucking participate. And I'm not saying you necessarily did that, but the argument that you made that we are the ultimate servants of this status quo is kind of, it's the same argument that people that would say that to me would make, that I'm just sitting around and doing nothing. Meanwhile, I'm not bragging. I spend probably a dozen or more hours a week talking about this to as many people as will listen to me with my little "the end is nigh" sign. You know what I mean? And I have a respectable following. I'm sitting here talking to your audience, which is far more than respectable. I'm doing everything I fucking can. And to me, more is accomplished by that than people that shuffle in to vote, because I could make the same argument. I could point the finger at you and say, you're a sheep. You're the sheep that lines up at the polls every year expecting change. You know, I have this analogy I make. I'm sorry to digress, but it's really relevant. American politics, and especially electoral politics as they exist, are like this busted down, rusted down fucking car, right? And all of us have this delusion that we're going to jump in that car this time, and we're going to turn the key, and this time it's going to start up, and we're going to drive down the road and go get a fucking tasty freeze together, man. It's going to be great. The wind's going to be in our hair. And of course, the reality is this car is, sitting on its rims. The rims long ago, just rotted off the wheelbase. The engine has seized for want of oil. The car is not going to drive. And we all pretend every year. And sometimes we change out a headlight. You know what? If we just, make this little incremental change on the headlight, then this year, man, it's going to change. This is the way to change. I've heard it my whole fucking life. And when it comes to the planet and the average person that lives on the planet, I've seen it get worse. And I've seen the stranglehold of capitalism get worse. So what should a guy like me do, Vosh? I'm not lazy. I voted in every fucking election that I could vote in since 1998. That's when I became eligible. I stopped voting after 2012. I could not bring myself to vote for Barack Obama after his bullshit fucking reversals on releasing the people that were being tortured in Gitmo.
If we were to use your analogy, the most intelligent thing to do if you need a new car entirely is to keep the car in a state of repair until you can drive to a new dealership. To acknowledge that you need to replace the car, but until that point, to make the incremental changes necessary to keep it from breaking down on you. I never made the claim that you were lazy or that anyone doing this was lazy. In fact, I acknowledge there are socioeconomic reasons for people to have abstained from voting. Even if I disagree with them, I'm not going to condemn 120 million people off the bat like that. But I've always followed this basic philosophy. And I believe it was Gandhi who said it, that all it takes for evil to flourish is for good men to stay silent. And that's kind of how I feel about this process. If voting takes nothing from us but our names, I don't give a fuck about my name. I give a fuck about the billions of people whose lives hinge on the decisions made by the electorate of the United States of America. And I don't believe it a valid excuse or I guess like excuse for abstinence from the system to place some arbitrary value on endorsement for the system. I don't endorse the system. No more than I endorse, for example, the institution of the police if I called upon them if I were mugged or if a family member of mine was shot. No more so than I endorse the federal government when I accept my COVID-19 relief. I merely participate in the system in the hopes of finding avenues through which I can do good. And ultimately, at this moment in time, I believe you can make a very strong argument for good being done by a vote, even if the process itself is involves sticking one's hand in a broken and exploitative system. I can't abide that excuse, in my opinion.
Let me poke a couple more holes in voting then. How can you assure me that a vote that you cast, or in fact that a vote that any normal American casts, actually ends up being tabulated for the person in which they voted for?
No more than I can guarantee the $20,000 of fundraising that I raised last night is actually going to go to people who need it. But making an attempt at positive change is better.
That is not true. That is absolutely. I actually think that if you were to ask the charitable organization that you raised for a document stating yes, indeed, that this money went, and for an accounting of where that money would go, you probably carefully picked a charity that would provide you an accounting, and we could reasonably be assured that that money would end up where they said it would. Unless they're scum fucks, and then
they could lie. I mean, it's impossible to know. We can only work within degrees of probability.
I understand that. Yes, it is impossible to know anything. The only thing that I know is that I know nothing. I get it. I'm with you on that. But I'm just saying, from the standpoint of this conversation, why is it? Why am I hearing? Why do I feel like I'm hearing two things from you? I feel like, and maybe if this is a bad faith analogy, then call me out on it and I will apologize, okay? It's like meeting a dude that's walking out of a Walmart with his basket filled with Walmart shit from China and Taiwan and wherever, right? And asking him, sir, how do you feel about Walmart? And he goes, tear it down, man. I'm fucking sick of Walmart and its oppressive practices and all this bullshit. And he keeps walking to his car and the guy follows him and says, well, how are you fighting it? Well, I figure I keep going back and I complain when I go and I tell them to stock new things. And eventually, hopefully, if enough of us do that, Walmart is going to be this new kind of like utopian great place. But until then, I'm going to keep, right on being a customer of Walmart, just like I always have been. What incentive are you giving the system to change?
Yeah. So the main
when you're willing to legitimize it by continuing to let them see this percentage of people actually took part in the pageantry that goes on here.
Well, the issue isn't that shopper is legitimizing it. The issue is that they're funding it. Voting doesn't fund the government. Paying your taxes does. If you want to make the argument that a true revolutionary would abstain from paying taxes, then you could. But I mean, that'd be a pretty quick route for every leftist to find their way into jail. But
of
what
course,
if?
I pay my taxes like everybody else does, and I'm not making that argument. Of course,
yeah.
You have to. I hate this.
I get it.
I hate this. You hate capitalism, yet you live within it argument. So I'm not trying to make that. No.
Right. So my ultimate argument, I don't think voting legitimizes the system. The federal government would keep trucking along if 40, 30, 25% of the population voted. In fact, I think they'd love that. The more voter, that's why they work so hard at voter disenfranchisement. The less voters they have to worry about, the easier their elections are, the less is hinged on fate. That'd be fantastic for them. The more enfranchisement there is, the more they sweat because they have to work for every vote.
Let me ask you this. We see the voter numbers, and what do they usually sit at? Let's just look at the presidential. How many people sit it out?
Well,
what percentage?
I think like 35 to here. I can check for 2016.
Sorry, I don't mean to put you to work. I thought you might just know.
I think it was about 35% of the population. Was it 50? It couldn't have been 50. Hold on.
That's believable.
By income, voter turnout, sex and age. 18 years and older. Okay, it looks like about 58%, I think, of yeah. Oh, no, that was 2008. Let's just say 40% doesn't vote. Let's go off that. It seems like a good rough estimate.
What if that number was 90? What kind of think about that from the perspective of the ruling class.
I think they'd love it. If nobody voted, that'd be phenomenal for them.
I mean, they'd love it. They'd love knowing that 90% of the people out there in a country that's filled with guns have checked so far out of their influence that they don't even bother to participate in the stupid little pageant that they set up for them.
But the 40% that don't vote today aren't like revolutionary. They're apathetic. They're not going to rise up against the government.
Some of them are apathetic. Some of them are lazy pieces of shit that don't give a fuck.
I don't mean lazy. When I say apathetic, I don't mean lazy. I mean they don't think the system can fix their problems. I'm not impugning their character.
That to me is not necessarily indicative of apathy. Thinking that the system is not the answer to your problem does not necessarily prescribe apathy in the world that I live in. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Well, if they don't do anything with it, like I don't think this will fix anything, so I won't do anything. I mean, that's pretty much.
A lot of us do. A lot of them do. Well, dude, people have limited reach. So there are a lot of people that don't. There are a lot of people that don't vote that feel exactly like me, and they don't do nothing. They talk to their friends and family on Facebook. They're 2 little followers on Twitter when they can. Whoever will listen to them, they talk. And if that's worthless,
it's not worthless.
What we're doing here is jerking each other off.
It's not worthless.
Either of us believe that.
But they should also vote. They should vote, and they should do the things they're already doing. I mean, I do more good for my cause by having this channel than I ever could by voting. I'm just one citizen of hundreds of millions, but I'm still going to vote.
And I respect your right to do that. And like I said, I'm not here trying to tell you don't vote. I'm telling you where I stand on it and why I can't. I don't know that we're going to come to a head or come to a point where we're going to find a level of agreement necessarily on that. I hope that doesn't tear us apart as people that have similar visions for the future.
Yeah, I'm not trying to shoot down any of your arguments or anything. I'm just
no. I
trying
don't
to
feel
present
like
the best
possible.
I'm
saying in the eyes of your audience, I don't want to be looked at as a foe. And a lot of times when I have conversations like this, I end up being everyone's foe. I'm not looking to be that, but I have no confidence in this system. I have no confidence in the current system as it exists to be reformable in enough time to stop becoming cataclysm.
Oh, I agree.
The ecological collapse.
But I don't think
economic
it can
collapse.
I don't think it can either. My goal is just to have a system that brings people over ideologically. Usually,
so
when you have far right, look at
Bolsonaro. Let's live as comfortably as we can for as long as we can on this dying world and kick the can down the road to the next fucking generation and let them deal with it.
We make the next generation more left-leaning through our action. Look at Bolsonaro, for example, or what's happening right now in Hungary or Poland. When far-right leaders take power, this empowers the far-right in that country. It leads to more people being born far-right. You can discuss these ideas openly. You can, if things get really far gone, school teachers begin to impress these ideas upon their school children. It goes likewise in the other direction. If you look at, and I am not defending these countries, but this is still a good example. If you look at what happened with Lenin and Stalin, Mao, and what happened in North Korea, even with Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, you see that enabling far left ideas in these countries also leads to a preponderance of these ideas spreading deep into the culture of that country, spreading from generation to generation. It's not that Bernie Sanders America could fix climate change. It couldn't. But Bernie Sanders America can bring about more people to the left. And if we do that, whatever revolutionary action takes place down the road will be far more likely to succeed. There's also the direct action argument. Vladimir Lenin said it himself, that one of the greatest reasons for one of the
sorry about that. I'm trying to mask something that would likely get your channel banned retardedly.
No worries.
But please, I'm listening.
One of the Vladimir Lenin said it himself, that one of the reasons you should engage in electoralism to prevent reactionary actors from taking the presidency or prime ministerial or whatever is because those reactionaries are more likely to destroy any direct action attempts that actually take place. That weak, inept, liberal, fucking limp dick people like Biden are way more likely to let us get away with shit than somebody like Trump would, which is why Trump has talked about demolishing the streets, using the unlimited power of the military against the protesters, sending in the National Guard, and enabling far-right groups to start mobilizing against protesters. Biden wouldn't do those things, or at the very least wouldn't do them as much. And in that way, our ability to directly change the system is predicated on the weakness and complicitness of our left-leaning leaders. So even a direct action argument benefits from keeping people like Trump from being the president.
Okay. I don't disagree on anything other than the idea that the only way to bring about that kind of direct action is by also going in and casting your vote that's going to go ahead and grease the wheels for the current system to continue.
I don't. It's just one of the ways.
And allow middle America to be real relieved when fucking Froyo opens up again down the street and go right back. Because let me tell you something, dude. You want to talk about some inept motherfuckers? That 60% that apparently does vote. I mean, let's not mince words here. Not everybody that shuffles in there to the polls with an idea who they're going to vote for is Friedrich Nietzsche or some shit. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of thinkers sprinkled in there. So this lack of an informed vote is just another argument against it.
Yeah, because our education systems.
I think there needs to be two components to have this kind of voting democracy work. Number one, you've got to have the right to vote, and we fail at that. It costs $1,000 in the state of Louisiana for somebody to get a license because they have to have proof of residency, which means they have to pay rent, and they have to have a car to get back and forth to a job so that they can pay rent. They don't have those things, so they can't vote. So number one, we fail at providing access to the vote, which is a reason I don't participate. Number two, every goddamn electoral cycle, we hear about numerous stories where ballots disappeared or were erroneously cast for the other candidate. But it always comes out 2 weeks after that candidate's already been coronated, the governor or whatever it is. So nothing's ever done about it. I watched it happen at the presidential level in 2000 as an adult, and let me tell you how that felt.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was one of the greatest electoral scandals.
Let me tell you how it felt to watch the fucking Supreme Court of the United States hand the United States over to George W. Bush.
But if we want to fix that, if we want to fix voter disenfranchisement, voter ID laws, the misplacement of voting of voting stations, we need local elected officials, if at the very least voting down ballot, getting senators and congresspeople and governors on the ballot so they can make those changes necessary.
And the people in national power are just going to go along with this, right?
Well, yeah.
Oh yeah, hold on, get rid of the Diebold machines that we can easily fucking get in and monkey with the numbers on. Oh, those trucks of votes that keep disappearing in Texas during every primary season, those trucks of votes that come from brown people neighborhoods.
Yeah,
That
well,
happened this year, by
well,
the
that
way. You
almost
remember
always
that?
happens. Yeah, that almost always happens in Republican districts. Voting in Democrats will go a long way towards fixing that. Yeah, well,
Sure.
Republicans are the ones who want to get rid of brown people's votes because brown people vote Dem. So yeah,
I understand that, but nobody's stopping it by voting for Joe Biden.
well, they are though, because if Democrats replace the Republicans in those seats, they can have much more power to influence the electoral positions in those districts. Yeah, Democrats have already formed committees. For as long as the Democrats are in office.
For how long until another righty comes along and pushes the Overton window a smidge back closer
then we keep voting and we keep them from getting back. We vote every single 2 years.
What a grinding nightmare that never has a fucking answer ever and that never gets better ever until it finally just rots and collapses.
That's like never making your bed because you know you're just going to unmake it that night. I mean, democracy is a process. I'm all for that,
by the way. I don't make my fucking bed.
Well, democracy is a process, and the world is a better place if we try to keep it upheld rather than just allowing it to get worse because the people who actually do care about voting are all the octogenarian fucking retirement home Republicans who just want to get black people out of their state. If we participate in this process, we make things better for them. No, wait, not the octogenarians, the people of color and what have you. We get their votes tallied, and then, hey, turns out when everyone's votes tallied, Republicans are never going to win in that district again. If we take this state by state, I mean, it won't, it's not guaranteed to work, but it's a process.
If the election of Joe Biden leads to mass enfranchisement of poor black and brown people in this country, and there's all of a sudden there's no more voter ID barrier, I'll come on your stream. You don't even have to talk to me, and I'll eat a fucking shoe. You can pick what style. I'll go buy a pair of shoes, and I will eat a shoe on your stream.
What if
Joe Biden does a fucking thing for a black or a brown person when it comes to enfranchising them?
A fucking thing? Well, okay, then I'll hold you to that.
Hold on, wait a minute. Let me correct myself. Maybe not a fucking thing, but if he actually goes a good distance towards fixing the problem of black and brown people being completely kept off the voter rolls with an economic barrier.
Yeah, that's a little vague, but I will say that yes, I think that with a Biden presidency, at the very least, the worsening tide will be abated and possibly things will be made better. It's always an improvement, but I'll never stake a claim in Biden like fixing a problem. Fuck Biden. But at least keep it from getting worse, and it'll be better than it would have been under Trump. Things have gotten a lot worse under Trump over the past 4 years. Like, a lot. At a local level, too. Because local representatives have felt empowered to get away with whatever the fuck they want to do. Like, there are no rules anymore. Trump is president.
And look at what happened, though. What we were talking about earlier in the stream. Look at the uprising that's happened because the pressure was turned up. Because it wasn't an Obama or it wasn't a Joe Biden in office when COVID-19 hit. It was one of these fucking jack boot wearing fucking KKK loving Republicans that did it. And now look what's happening. Cities are burning, Vosh.
And the Democratic voters chose Biden overwhelmingly because they preferred electoralism, because they just wanted anyone to beat Trump. We showed them what the world was like under Trump, and they said, okay, we'll take any Democrat. We need things to break under a Democrat for these people to recognize that there's a wall further to the left of the DNC that they need to break down.
I think knowing the fact that so many people are low information voters, asking your informed audience to go out and vote for Biden and hoping that he would win kicks the can down the road another fucking 4 to 8 years and allows these people, some of them that are feeling righteously indignant right now and taking to the streets in their cities all over this fucking country and the world, I guess. This is spreading.
I don't see how letting Trump win another term fixes anything. Well,
now I've got a reason to go home because we did it, boys. We put Biden in the presidency.
Sure, the liberals.
Back to the hood.
But the lefties.
Going back to the hood, y'all.
I don't think there's any evidence to indicate that a Biden presidency would be marked by great civil rest. I think that the material conditions that have this is a fundamental component of Marxism. People's radicalizations are a part of material conditions, not a part of what leader is in power. It doesn't matter whether Trump or Biden is at the helm. America is still broken, and the brokenness, the disrepair, is going to motivate people towards direct action one way or another. I'd just rather have a person in office who is A, less likely to fight against that, and B, more more likely to reveal the inherent inconsistencies within the DNC's approach towards fixing America. And if we can do that, I mean, maybe we can get something out of this. Maybe we can get another Bernie Sanders to take the helm in 2024. I know some people say AOC. I'm not really sure about that.
Are you a proponent of eventual revolution?
Yeah, very much so.
You know, let's talk a little Marxish. You know what I mean? We're talking about the proletariat rising up and seizing the means of production.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Do you think that do you think Joe Biden's a move towards that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's a disagreement. I mean, maybe we can hash it out, but I just don't know that you and I are ever going to agree on that.
Possibly. I mean, again, it's mostly a matter of showing the Democrats where the faults lie. Not with Trump, but with liberalism. Not with the Republican Party, but with the current system. And if we can't do that as long as they're fighting against an obvious cartoon enemy. Nobody would... It's like a Saturday morning cartoon. Nobody would recognize the secret evil villain that runs the hero's base as long as they have, like, Mordak to fight. As long as there's an obvious threat. As long as there's a very clear and consistent ideologically opposed enemy. The greater evil looms overhead, unknownst to, I guess, the general population.
I mean,
in my opinion,
I agree. I mean, look, dude, I agree with certain parts of that opinion. I disagree with others. The part that I kind of take umbrage with is this idea that Trump hasn't moved us in a positive direction. And let me explain myself before everybody goes ape shit. Okay. We're at 3.5 years of Donald Trump, the big fucking racist doofus that just, you know, anytime he's got a chance to cool things off, he just inflames them. And look at what's happening. COVID-19 comes along and there's this shockingly inept response led by his government. And it puts all this pressure on people, and people start, for the first time in my lifetime, there was no bread in the grocery store. It's like, whoa. No bread? They're out of what? They're out of meat? They're out of bread? They're out of eggs? No milk? That was all true of me. I was asked to not leave my house. I had no access to any of that. Now, thankfully, the engine of capitalism kicked back in for a minute. They brought some poor fucking people back to work, probably to die of coronavirus, and get me my milk. And that's the best we can hope for. But that happens on Donald Trump's watch.
Was that not?
And the pressure builds. It's like he walked over and took the pressure cooker, which, by the way, Barack Obama was cranking up with his stupid corporate ACA sellout. Oh, I'm gonna make sure that everybody's covered, and then it's just a big old gift to fucking, these fucking healthcare companies. But anyway, the point is, Trump comes along, turns up that pressure cooker, and all of a sudden, Chicago's burning, LA's burning. Minneapolis, St. Paul are burning. Florida's starting to burn. Parts of the South are starting to burn. Different names are being used too. It's not just George Floyd. It's their local martyr. It's the last brown person that died in the streets because a pig came along and wanted to beat a brown person.
The revolution doesn't mean anything if people aren't moved towards the correct ideological positions, though. All this fire and blood in the streets means nothing if all the Democrats learn from it is, okay, we'd better vote for Biden harder next time. That's ultimately the issue. It's not just the antagonism that's necessary. It's for people to learn the correct lessons from the antagonism. And if all the Dems learn from all of this is Orange Man bad, which I think a lot of them are, frankly, then we get nothing from that long term.
I agree with that. I'm sick of, I made a joke the other day about this Orange Man bad shit needs to end. I'm so sick of fucking dumbass, what's his name that does the impersonation of him on SNL? I'm so sick of dumbass fucking.
You watch SNL? Why would you do that to yourself?
I don't, but I'm on Twitter and some, people will post memes where he's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm from the 80s, so I'm kind of a boomer. So I follow some older people and they're like, hey, this was fucking hilarious. And it's just some dumbass fucking idiot whose name I can't remember from SNL with Cheeto dust on his face.
Yeah, but that's all the Democrats are getting from this. Or at least a lot of them. They're just getting like, damn, Trump sure is a bad president. A lot of them don't understand COVID-19 was always going to ravage the country no matter what the response, because we don't have a system for the decommodification of our industries. We don't have a debt relief program capable of meaningfully addressing the needs of the people. George Floyd still would have died under Biden. The Minneapolis Police Department was racist as fuck one way or another. Biden wasn't going to personally intervene in that. All all these conditions would have taken place just the same, and the BLM marches took place during the Obama presidency. All these conditions exist one way or another, but the lessons learned are different. Do we blame Trump or do we blame the system? Do we blame Republicans or do we blame the political establishment? And I would much rather lead Democrats, who are the only people we're ever going to move, at least most of them, to a position where they're forced to criticize the meaningful enemy of the American people, rather than the two puppet heads that have been placed to battle it out in D.C. until the end of time.
I believe it's a nobly defended position. And I won't. No, I'm saying, to me personally, I'm not trying to say that it's that way for anybody else that's watching. The people that follow you probably agree 100%. To me, it's a nobly defended position, but it is flawed based on the fact that it perpetuates a system that you yourself have admitted. We're like this little incremental change, this putting, people that are, because I got to be honest with you, Biden would have been a fucking centrist leaning Republican in my childhood based on his policy positions.
He's pretty progressive these days, at least.
Well, I mean, he started to talk the talk, but see, I've heard that too. I've heard way too many slick politicians that were going to change the paradigm and push the Overton window back to the left talk that kind of talk. I don't believe a fucking word of it coming out of Biden. I know where Biden's heart is.
I mean, if we get people ultimately, like, our ability to influence the Democratic Party leverages on our votes, right?
In this case, it's leveraged on what he's willing to say.
Sure, I just think
during the electoral cycle prior to getting into office, whether it translates into any action out of him. I mean, you and I can, we can make a little side bet on that if you want, but possibly the wind is fucking blowing.
I think that Biden, like most Democrats, is kind of like a principleless, spineless worm who will just follow anything the committees tell him is valid. Everything from Obama's position on gay marriage to everything that happened forthcoming, even throughout the entirety of his presidency. Even him voting on the crime bill was him, like, largely acquiescing to massive public demand at the time. I just think he's another corporate politician that will do basically whatever he thinks will allow him to be put in a position to best represent his corporate sponsors. That's
totally fucking agree.
Yeah, but if right now the Democratic Party or its constituency seems to be pretty farther left. I mean, a lot of them liked Bernie's ideas, which is why he got so far along, which is why Biden has acquiesced in a public option for the Medicare system, which is why he's acquiesced on student debt loan forgiveness, which is why he's acquiesced on free college up to 2 years. Like, there are a lot of really substantial positions.
Vosh, he's acquiesced on talking about that on the campaign trail. I might be willing to choose another article of clothing and eat it if he makes any fucking measurable progress towards free fucking college for everybody.
More likely he does it than Trump. So
I have heard these honey sweet lies before, Vosh. I've been alive long enough to hear these honey sweet lies from these politicians that are all sold out. And when it's electoral season, free this for all. Stop this horrible, Barack Obama did it, and he's probably the most memorable to someone that's your age. The first thing I'm going to do is sit down at the desk and I'm going to sign an executive order releasing the people at Guantanamo.
No, I remember, and the whole, But the issue is, like, we can still work within probabilistic degrees of different presidential candidates doing different things. I'll never hinge, like, my life or anything, no pants eating, on the honesty of a political candidate, but we have to recognize that the things they say do matter because there is, an association, there is a correlative relationship between the promises that politicians make and the things they actually do. I'm not arguing that they're definitely going to do them or that they're honest or good-natured or moral or charitable or anything like that. I'm only saying that, in a utilitarian sense, it's more likely that Biden will do these things than Trump, and that's all I need to vote for him.
Fair enough. That I need more to be persuaded to vote for a person, and that's just all there is to it. You know what I mean? I require more for him than just the assurance that he's going to be slightly better than the Republican candidate. Well, I don't think the earth has time, because I got to tell you, Vosh, and maybe this is fucking emotional, and I know you like, what do you call it? Prescriptive dialectics. You like a.
I like a lot of. I like both those words. We can go.
You said it earlier, and I tried to make a note of it.
Historical
in my head,
dialectic.
No. Just how you go through things.
The material dialectic.
There you
argument. Go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. But from where I'm sitting, I feel this force in my life as I get older. And it's like this clock ticking. And part of that is just me getting older and knowing that, like, a little bit shorter of breath, one day closer to death. That starts happening to people around my age, around 40. You start to become really aware of that mortality that's creeping around the corner, especially if you're a big fat fuck like me.
Yeah, we're in the ballpark.
But there's this feeling of like just a clock. That's how I represent it in my head when I really try and sit down and think about this, and it's just ticking inexorably. And there's not much time. You can tell it's winding down. You know what I mean? Now, I can't tell you in this year, I'm not trying to be that guy. In this year, the scroll says that everything will collapse. Shit's about to get real fucked up, Vosh. Real soon. And people that think like you, in my mind, are better off being revolutionaries and shit. Being out there and telling people, fuck this system. Fuck everything that Joe Biden stands for. Fuck settling for incremental change, one more fucking electoral cycle as black people, hold on, as black people are being stomped in the fucking streets. Fuck this system. But let's think of something better. Let's advocate. And you know what? Let's bring that voter participation number down to single digits. Because I have one thing that I disagree with you is I do not think the powers that be would look at those numbers and go, woohoo, yeah. They'd look at 90% of people in this country going, fuck what you're giving me. I'm going my own way, and go, uh-oh. And they'd be right to, too. They'd be right to, too. Because those of us that don't participate, we don't really feel too good about the way that we've been treated by the government. I don't know anything about your life, Vosh, but I've been fucked with by authority from every fucking angle. And I'm not even a black dude. I'm a white guy. What privilege I had to walk through that butt fucking in America.
There are several problems. First of all, I am a revolutionary. We can't have a revolution right now. The material conditions aren't ripe for a revolution. We can't all take to the streets and overthrow the federal government. It's not possible. All the incremental change I advocate for up until that point is to put us in a position where we can win that revolution. That's what I care about. We can't just do it right off the bat. Until then, you have to engage strategically in whatever actions, electoral or direct action, are necessary to bring about a material set of conditions that are capable of allowing us to win that revolution. It has nothing to do with endorsing the system. The system exists whether we like it or not. The feudal kings and monarchs had 0% voter participation. The government doesn't give a fuck whether we like it. And the people who don't vote right now aren't not voting because they're discontent with the government. Everyone's discontent with the government. They're just discontent with the government and, electorally speaking, useless. Everyone disagrees with the government. Nobody likes how the government is functioning right now. Even Republicans are bending over backwards to try and excuse how they can protest against the federal government while also sucking the dick of the president up there. Nobody likes how it's functioning. But some people see how it's not functioning and decide to check out because of that. A lot of those people who check out are doing it because they are lazy. Many of them are doing it because they're systemically disenfranchised, and I don't fault them for that. Some people are doing it because on an ego level, they don't like the idea of endorsing a system, even though the system really doesn't give a shit whether or not they vote. It just bothers me when we will make these grandiose appeals towards revolution by engaging in actions that harm our chances long-term of engaging in revolutions that will help people. There's nothing incremental about my strategy long-term, but in the meantime, there's nothing we can do from a revolutionary perspective, and I don't harm my ability to engage in direct action by voting. It's going to be one...
I don't believe that's true.
Letter. It's one letter that I have to write. I get to do mail-in voting. I don't even have to leave my house.
That's exactly how I voted in every election from 1998 to 2012.
How does it harm my ability to do direct action by voting?
I don't think it does necessarily. I do think that you spend an inordinate amount of time trying to convince people to continue participating in a system that would butt fuck you in a second.
Well, it would butt fuck. It continues to butt fuck us whether or not we vote. I mean, Trump would butt fuck us worse. It's not like we're consenting to the butt fucking. We're just doing what we can to make it so long term the butt fuck hurts less.
Because long term, the butt fuck doesn't hurt less.
Well, it does, at least in the short term, but long term...
Not in a capitalist world, not in a vulture capitalist world.
But I'm trying to move people to
degradation.
I'm trying to move people to anti-capitalism. That's what I want to do incrementally.
By voting for a capitalist.
Yeah. Bernie Sanders is a capitalist. Was he looking to
I'm not even a fucking
abolish?
communist. I don't call myself a communist. You said that I was more of a socialist earlier. Maybe that's true. I'm not voting for capitalists anymore.
Well, that's fine.
I'm not
But
going to
what
do
if
it. I'm not going to put somebody that's going to protect the idea of capital in power anymore.
But
That's another hill
is.
I'm willing to die on. Sorry.
What if we vote in capitalists who are more left leaning that incline people towards non-capitalist viewpoints, like
Because
Bernie Sanders did?
I believe that capitalism, like religion, is a poison pill, and I believe that when it is mixed with government, it can do nothing but harm. I think that any progress that's made will be bought back by ad execs. I believe that any legislation that's passed banning predatory practices will be slowly but surely wormed away at. I believe this because I've watched legislation like that disappear year after year after year. And you know what? A lot of my life, a lot of that 40 years, guess who was in the office? Wasn't a Republican. A lot of the years I lived under Democrat. I lived under a Democratic presidency. I lived under a Democratic presidency that was strong and well liked and had both houses of Congress.
Do you think we'd be in a better position if Bush had won and then Mitt Romney and McCain had won as well? Like if we had just had a Republican presidency
That's not
for
the
20
way. That's
years
not the
straight?
way. That's not the way the political pendulum works, is it?
I don't think there is a pendulum. I reject this. I think this is an excuse accelerationists use to justify non-participation in the system they have an ego-driven reason not to engage with. Like if we're talking about this, like right now, the most radical swing towards leftism in this country was brought about by Bernie Sanders, an electoral candidate who arose to prominence after 8 years of Obama. It took 8 years of a liberal Democrat, or I guess centrist Democrat, to bring about a person whose cult of personality moved more people over to leftism than Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and W.E.B. Du Bois combined. And that's incredible. And that's the power that strategic engagement in the system is capable of bringing about.
I'm not sure that I agree necessarily with the rhetoric that Bernie Sanders somehow did more than all of the names that you mentioned.
No, not did more, just brought more people to leftism. Obviously, if we're just talking like good done, then of course MLK.
I don't know that I believe that either, but let's, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, we can I guess work the math on that later. But
it doesn't matter.
That's the power.
I mean, we can if you want. It doesn't matter. I just don't. It doesn't seem to me that to be true, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I agree. Haven't done like hard math in it, but yeah, sure. Whatever the case is, just the issue I have is that through Bernie Sanders' participation in our capitalist electoral system, millions of people were pushed farther left. Many of them left of capitalism, many of them actively socialists now. Our ability to win that revolution that you want, that I want, is predicated on our ability to bring the masses over to our position. But that cannot be done as long as people think the only enemy they're fighting is Trump or the Republican Party. People have to realize there's a greater enemy. And it was Bernie Sanders highlighting the internal inconsistencies of the DNC that moved people in that position. I believe in the power of grand electoral change if mobilized by people like Bernie Sanders, people who will expose people to the internal contradictions of capitalism. That is the mechanism through which we gain the numbers necessary to win that revolution 20, 30, 40 years down the line, when this country isn't still thinking that Trump is its greatest enemy, when this country recognizes that capitalism and global climate change are its greatest enemies.
Do you think the left-right paradigm will persist when the grocery stores start shuttering their doors?
Yes.
And food abundance stops.
The right will blame immigrants. Yes, 100%.
Right. The right will blame immigrants, but it'll be at the same time that the right and left are tearing down infrastructure, looting. I'm talking about like food not being available in a large scale, not even just in the United States, but globally, which is what we're relegating ourselves to climate change wise. This is, my little crystal ball into the future is that our planet's ability to sustain us by growing enough food and providing environments where we can raise enough herds to feed ourselves in the numbers that we currently exist eventually reaches a point and starts to decline.
I do not think that severe economic anxiety will bring people together politically. I think it'll lead to fascism, as it already has been in many other countries in the world.
You know what? I will agree with you on this. I will give you this point, if it's a point against me, that typically when people lose faith in an economic system in the past, despotism has risen in its place. and right-wing authoritarianism has a tendency to spring up when people are real mad because there's no food and there's no money.
Yeah, and the majority power holders are usually the ones that end up leading that new society. And right now, it's still fucking white dudes, or I guess just white people broadly.
This is germane to the point. I'm glad you said that, because the question I have when I listen to you is this. Can you please try, and I'm not trying to diminish your point by describing it as I do.
Mhm.
I'm just a naturally I'm kind of an asshole. When is the magical fucking fairy dust moment going to come where the owner class, the people that control the capital of this country and the world, are going to finally go, you know what, Vosh, and people who think like Vosh, here's our asshole. Here's our butthole. You're right. You're right. Mea culpa. We did wrong. Here is 90% of our profits really injected back into, you know what? Fuck profits. Here's us saying we're not billionaires anymore. We're going to be normal fucking people, and we're going to join a society in which your basic needs are provided for. Let's just do it, guys. Come on. Bill, you do it first. Burn your Ferrari. When is this going to fucking happen? Because these people have us in. Have you ever seen and it's really sad, by the way, a pit bull in a choke chain?
I in cartoons, I think, but probably not.
Okay, I've seen it. I've seen it in real life. I grew up in an area that unfortunately had a pit bull culture that included having a big mean pit bull and putting a choke chain on it. It's sad, and that's where we are. That's what capitalism has done to us as a people. It has put us in a choke chain. And if we don't break that fucking chain at some point, if we just keep going, well, the money just needs to be redistributed right. I never see a day that Bill Gates, and I'm not, maybe he'll do it. I never see a day that Jeff Bezos, without somebody showing up to his house to steal shit from him, is going to give a fucking thing to anybody that actually improves the lives of normal people. And under capitalism, that's what we need to happen. We need the richest among us to pay an exorbitant amount of taxes out of the goodness of their hearts and accept a level of richness that would make you and me shit our pants.
I think that there are some ways for us to rang the capital class in line through electoral reform. Stuff like tax rates, capital acquisition. Right now, our capital taxes are incredibly fucking low. Obviously, like inheritance tax is a huge one. We can also do like right of first refusal with like workers being able to purchase businesses. And Bernie suggested that a portion of the stock of every large firm, 20% I think, be owned collectively by the workers. But when it comes to the abolition of the capital class, this could never be done electorally, not in a million years. And it is at that point, I would hope, that our electoral maneuvering has brought about enough popular support for us to win whatever conflict takes place after that.
I disagreed with you earlier on something, and I can't remember what exactly it was. But the point that I wanted to make, I think, is germane now. Mm-hmm. There is something that we can do that doesn't involve voting that I think would be extraordinarily powerful as a tool against the very people that we're talking about and the system that we're talking about. And that is a general strike.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
An absolute refusal. I'm talking all the way, man. Because listen, I was raised a union kid. Both of my parents worked in a factory growing up. My dad was the president of local number 254, glass molders, pottery, plastic, allied workers for a number of years. I was very privileged to sit and get to watch him do his business and to listen to union delegation when I was a young man and to go to some protests. I actually attended a number of labor strikes when I was a young man, including one in Las Vegas that was awesome because it's the first time I saw Street Fighter 2, but I digress. One thing that never left me from my parents' involvement and dedication to that union was that the most fucking precious thing in the world is your time. It's the only thing they're not making more of. And entering into a contract with an employer is you selling the most precious fucking thing in your life to them for an agreed upon amount and some benefits on the side if you're lucky. And that's what the labor movement is about. And at this point, It's almost petered out to a whisper. It doesn't exist anymore like it did when I was a child. The power of labor has diminished. And if the workers of this country stopped letting union busting happen and just joined a general workers of the world, I know there's one. They used to come and protest at the Starbucks I worked at all the time. United Workers of the World. Maybe they're not perfect, but you know what? If labor organized in this country, all this authoritarianism you're talking about, all these guns, because I agree that's a problem to a revolution, but you know what? It would shit its pants. And so would the billionaires. If the people reasserted their ability to stop this fucking engine.
I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. So let's elect people who are going to help revitalize unions in this country. No, I know.
You think Joe Biden is going to revitalize
more than
unions
Trump
in this country?
Yeah, 100% more than Trump. Also, voting down ballot. There are literal socialists who are running as congresspeople and senators. Yeah, those people actually will.
Okay.
No, I completely agree. But the issue is right now the labor movement is broken in this country. And two, a lot of the people who are in unions aren't socialists. They're just looking out for higher wages for themselves. They need to be made to understand that what they're really fighting against isn't their boss. They're fighting against the system that allows them to have a boss.
You know, maybe unions as they exist now are just fighting for higher wages for themselves. But when I was a kid and the union action that I saw and participated in was about protecting your life and your time and demanding that it has value, that your human life and the time that you get to spend, the brief fucking flickering time you get to spend on this planet is worth something.
Yeah,
that's what unions used to be about.
I've read all up about the union organizing back during the turn of the 20th century was responsible for almost all of the worker protections that we have today. We don't have them anymore because union protections were dismantled by conservative politicians. It wasn't people like Obama and Biden going up there. It was local representatives who kept adulating the private businesses, tearing apart the rights for workers to organize. And today they work collectively with massive firms like Walmart and Amazon, circumventing pre-existing laws to keep people from unionizing, allowing these people to be fired if they even whisper of unionization with even their firms.
I don't deny that this stuff is true, but what I don't like is this excuse making. Because
for what?
To say that back when unions were stronger, which I was privileged to live at a time when they were, that there weren't attempts to undermine said union in any way possible is just not
they were,
true.
but then they won. We lost.
They didn't. Well, yeah. They won and we lost because we started making excuses like, well, they told us they were going to fire us. Back in the day, they used to say, fuck that. You know what? We go camp out at the one entrance to this fucking factory. And they'll, they want to bring trucks in here or scabs to replace us. They can drive over our bodies. And if the cops want to come and arrest the 4,000 people that work at this fucking factory, they can do it. And you know what happened? Concessions got made. All of a sudden, contracts were better. All of a sudden, two people like my parents who worked factory jobs. My mom pushed a broom, worked low-level factory work. My dad was a mechanic. And they bought a house, not like went and found a house that was already built. Picked a piece of land, purchased 2 acres of it, had an architect or whatever the fuck does this come in and go like, what do you want? Design them a house and have it built. And it was on the backs of their willingness when the company went too far to shut that motherfucker down by violence if necessary.
Do you know?
If a scab tries to break that line, you beat the fuck out of that scab and the next one doesn't.
Do you know who your parents voted for in 1980 and 1984 for the presidency?
I do not know for an absolute certainty, but I can tell you my president, I'm sorry, my presidents, my parents voted Democrat their entire.
Okay. That's good. I'm glad they did because Reagan broke the back of the unions in this country. The real reason unions fell is because we voted in politicians who broke them. And these weren't snaky Democrats who went up there and said they were going to bolster unions' rights and then fuck them over. These were Republicans who out and about advertised themselves as pro-business conservatives and then did exactly what they said they were going to do.
They won because people got comfortable.
Because people stopped voting for the right candidates.
No.
I don't understand how can you say that people's voting choices didn't lead to the breaking of the unions?
When they voted for even when they voted for the right candidates, unions were under assault from the people that really pulled the puppet strings, which is the corporations that these fucking unionized people work for.
This is bordering on conspiracy, so you don't think the positions of presidential candidates have any bearing on what they do to the country?
At the back end, no. At the back end, hold on, listen to me, and let me justify myself. At the back end, I think it's the same economic transaction. I think at the back end, for the most part, there might be some true believers out there on both sides, but for the most part, electoral politics as they exist right now, it's a money-making machine.
Then why do
anybody could justify it any other way? The idea of becoming a national politician seems to be, unless you can fucking prove me wrong by precedent in history, to lavish fucking favors upon corporations, to lavish personal favors upon buddies of yours, and to perpetuate ultimately a status quo that allows business to continue to operate unchallenged.
I understand the sentiment sounds good, but it's a fact of the world that Republicans consistently do different things in office than Democrats, and the damage done to unions can be directly tied to legislation that was written and passed by Republican candidates. I understand that capitalism is the ultimate string puller at the back of that, but this is rhetoric disguising fact. It is a fact of the matter that the electoral decision-making of United States citizens in 1980 and 1984 directly contributed to the destruction of the unions. I'm not saying that's the only thing that happened, but that it is absolutely something that happened.
You know what? I'm more critical of unions than you are. I don't think that this was the politicians broke our backs. You know what failed that caused unions to go under and the world to become a dystopian worker-slave nightmare? Solidarity. It's a word you used to hear a lot passed around in unions. Solidarity. I traveled all over California as a little union brat, protesting in front of places I'd never been, in industries that my parents had nothing to do with. I protested in front of a Las Vegas casino for 3.5 weeks that was being torn down, and everybody inside it fired and sold to another company that refused to rehire them, and they were unionized. People came from all over the country. There's no news stories floated around about it anymore. It was huge. The people mobilized in such a way that those people ended up getting hired. They kept their jobs and their union benefits in the new casino that was built as a result of solidarity. That's what died. You know what? These Republican politicians come and go. See, we disagree. I believe the pendulum exists. I believe that's the political game.
But your argument is just that laws don't matter. Like, that's what you're arguing, that it doesn't matter. Laws are literally irrelevant, and it's just like feelings, and people just believe things or they don't. That there's no way whatsoever to change the conditions in our country because all the mechanisms for doing so are fake and ephemeral. Like this is non-demonstrable. Like you can easily track. Like why impugn Biden for the crime bill? I guess like police just would have done whatever they did anyway, with or without Biden voting for the crime bill. Why ever look at any politician's electoral records? Why care about anything involving politics? Because the material conditions of changing how this world exists or how this country functions are completely unrelated to anything we do. I say solidarity doesn't matter, even though you could easily draw empirical evidence to indicate that solidarity did mean a lot to the movement of unions back in the day. I say it doesn't because, I don't know, it doesn't fit my narrative because I'd rather make everything electoral. I don't deny solidarity matters, but your inability to recognize that electoral decision-making has a massive outcome on the ability to mobilize in this country is delusional. It's not a principled stance. You're just ignoring factual evidence that would force you to recognize that not voting is an immoral decision on your part.
I'm not accusing you of putting words in my mouth, but I would love for you to quote me saying anything that you said in the last 10 seconds of your speech there. I won't try and fucking paraphrase you again. You know what you said.
Sure. So I made the claim that you said electoralism doesn't matter and votes don't matter. And I can cite that because about 1.5 minutes ago, you made the claim that, yeah, it really doesn't matter what gets passed because the capitalist puppet masters at the back are going to do whatever they want anyway, and who you elect has no relationship to that. In spite of the fact that it is...
Are we talking past each other here, Vosh? I'm talking about the way you fight back.
I'm talking about what led to the death of unions in this country, and Reagan did a lot, and people voted for Reagan.
I'm talking about direct action. I'm talking about stopping the machine in its tracks, closing down the cities, closing down the shops, closing down the Walmarts.
What are we talking about with? Wait, are we talking about strikes or unions?
I'm talking about new unions. I'm talking about a national labor movement.
Okay, but we were talking about what led to the death of unions. You argued it was the death of solidarity, and I agree ideological conditions changed. I argue that who you vote in office has a huge impact on the power of unions in this country, and you denied that. You said that is not the case. So I am challenging that position.
I don't think it's the case.
Okay, so then what did I say that was a misrepresentation of your point when I went on my little spiel?
I think that you're ascribing the failure of solidarity due to the creature comforts that labor unions and labor organizations provided people, the increased wages, the ability to settle down and order a family, and generationally, people stopped giving a fuck.
Okay, but I agree that happened.
But stopped caring enough to line up outside their store and shut it down for 2 weeks until their boss gave them a raise.
But the laws also made a difference. That's why you can see like law passed and then union membership dip right after. Like these aren't coincidences.
Union solidarity allowed, or the failure of union solidarity allowed those capitalistic Republican vultures to come in and slowly chip away at the rights of the working man, not the other way around. They were not the big boogeyman villain in this. It was a failure of the left to protect one another.
So what if the left was in power? What if the left was in power at the time? Then wouldn't they have not chipped in?
My contention is that there have been leftists in this country, and I think that history bears me out, that have done profound damage to the labor movement. I'm talking about two different things.
But not the president of the United States of America.
And I'm talking about a class made of working people that sell their lives for cash to these big corporations and the rights they have.
You keep using this evocative language, but we're talking very specifically about which conditions led to the downfall of unions in this country, and it is just not disputed in any circle that laws passed by Reagan massively hurt unions in this country, because the ability for people to form...
I never disputed that. I never disputed that unions were picked apart by laws.
I believe you did.
Problem that I have from you is, in your world, Republicans showed up like Snidely Whiplash because people voted wrong and went, we'll defeat these labor unionists.
No, they did exactly what they said they were going to do.
No. Here's what happened. What happened is exactly what I said. Baby boomers got comfortable. They got fat. They got happy. They sat on their union jobs, and slowly but surely shit started to change. But you know what? Who wants to upset the apple cart? Shit's good. It was a bonanza all through the fucking Clinton years.
Wait, please, wait.
Surplus.
So if we acknowledge the fact that union solidarity was on the decline and laws passed by Republicans exacerbated that decline by preying on their ideological weakness, would you not argue that if leftists or left-leaning people were in the presidency, they would not have taken advantage of that weakness in the same way that Reagan did?
Could you revise the question?
Yeah, so if we had voted for a Dem instead of Reagan back in 80 and 84, don't you think they would have not passed those laws or passed different laws that would not have so substantially damaged unions?
Are you asking me if I think it's possible if a Democratic president like a Michael Dukakis or something would have signed any legislation that hurt unions? The answer is absolutely yes.
Would they have done as bad as Reagan?
And here we are again. It's always this. Everything. All our disagreements, Vosh, come back to this lesser of two evil things.
All politics is lesser of two evils. A revolution is lesser of two evils.
Right. I understand I understand where it stands, but the elemental nature of that fucking disagreement hobbles us as leftists.
No, it's not. It's not hard to just vote every 4 years. This is indisputable in liberal circles.
I never said it is, man. In fact, I told you earlier how easy it was for me to vote. I was a California kid. I signed up for a fucking absentee ballot. I sat down for 15 minutes and went, check, 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 check. Threw it in the mail, postage paid, and I was done.
Okay. So again, do you acknowledge that voting in better presidential candidates would make it less likely that legislation damaging to unions would be passed?
Do I believe? Okay, one more time.
Do you believe voting in better candidates than Reagan, more left-leaning ones, would have decreased the likelihood of damaging legislation to unions having been passed?
Possibly.
Okay.
So I won't say for an absolute certainty that that's the case, but I'll say possibly.
Okay, so voting then for the right candidate can allow us to better build unions and direct action, which are the real mechanisms of change.
Possibly.
Okay, so if there's a chance that participating in the electoral process allows us to better bolster ourselves in a non-electoral sense, would it not be preferable to direct energy towards voting for those candidates, however minute that energy may be?
from your perspective, yes.
Wait, what? How do we jump from you agreeing to it being from my perspective?
Because we jumped from two very agreeable subjects to one that I don't agree with.
Wait, but doesn't it logically follow that if doing a thing does good in the way you want to do good, that you should probably do that thing?
If that thing is doing incremental good, that is not going to help us prepare.
But it will. We just acknowledged it will, because the incremental good will increase the likelihood of us being able to engage in direct action, like unions.
I mean, I think that what's stopping us from engaging in direct action is just doing it. Like, I know that sounds simple, but
it does. It sounds simplistic to the point of absurdity.
Because it feels to me like you're giving me some woo-woo that, like, if we elect Joe Biden, all of a sudden this fairy dust will fall over.
I'm giving you woo-woo, and you just said we just need to do it? Everything that I'm saying can be verified through the actual ideological trends of Americans following the election of different candidates and the laws that they passed. You're the one saying we should just do it. Good.
How's that system worked out
good.
For the average?
We aren't good. Yes.
Good.
Yes. It's worked better than not doing anything.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. Bernie Sanders' participation has led to millions of people going further to the left. Pretty much every single good law we have in this country has been brought about for direct action being done by protesters and union leaders and socialists and anarchists that were only allowed to do what they did because they weren't operating under a fascist government that would have just had them shot in the streets. Everything good in this country is done by people who fight and accept the fact that there are no guarantees and we aren't going to fix everything in one go. But that suffering, the process of engaging with the system, is what defines a good political actor. And I will not abstain from these processes just because a politician could be lying or because it's not enough or because I have to put my name on a document that the government owns.
I tried to be clear with you earlier, and maybe my argument style has, because I feel an antagonism that I don't think it needs to be there. And I'm not accusing you of yelling. I've been doing my fair share of yelling at you, but I think ultimately, earlier on, I tried to make it a point to tell you that I'm not here to try and convince you or any of your followers to follow in my footsteps. I'm not starting some drop out and fucking who cares, don't vote moment. If that's where you want to put your fucking energy, I don't live in your fucking shoes. And I wouldn't want you living in mine.
I wish I wasn't putting energy into this, by the way. I wish this, because this is like a done deal. Like, mathematically.
It's sad to me that you feel that way. It's sad to me that you feel that way because 40% of Americans agree with me. Not necessarily agree with everything that I've said tonight, but agree with the fact that it's not worth voting in this fucking stupid, completely top to bottom corporate owned system.
And like half of Americans don't believe in evolution. I don't think throwing in your lot with a majority is a bunch of a defense of your argument.
All right. I wasn't trying to make a grand fucking defense of my argument with that statement, Vosh. I was just telling you that, like, look, there's a lot of people that, and that seems to be something you have a hard time with. There's a lot of people that don't vote that think the same way that I do.
But that's not
are just as obstinate as I am. And I know that you think that I've just thrown a bunch of political woo at you or whatever, because I refuse to believe that we have time for incremental change.
So what's your alternative?
A collapse.
We can't collapse. We can't make a collapse.
So you remember? Do you remember? I think we could, but we'll talk about that in a second. You remember earlier in our fucking conversation when we talked about a future where people could move wherever they wanted, a future where in order for that to happen, capitalism has to die. In order for capitalism has to die, or in order for capitalism to die, we're going to have to take that power. Now, we can do it now, or we can do it 30 years down the road when we're further under the thumb. I'm an advocate for now.
But if we do it now, we lose. Socialism does not replace capitalism if we collapse right now.
See, that's why I'm not an advocate for socialism. That's not why I'm out here trying to get people to think about socialism.
Wait, but the white beach that you want isn't going to happen if we collapse right now. An authoritarian government is going to take its place, and you're going to be assigned a state. If you're not executed, you're going to be assigned a state apartment where you will be forced to produce children and work until you die at 82.
Okay. I mean, if I'm being fanciful with my idea, that's just as fanciful, my friend.
Wait.
This dystopia that you're putting forth is possible.
What do you think will happen if we collapse right now?
What?
What do you think will
What?
happen if we collapse right now? If you don't care if it's socialism that comes after, then are you even looking for a better world, or are you just mad at the one that exists now?
Why would you? Have you listened to anything I've said tonight, dude?
I have. So, but
Did
you
you
just said
just
you don't care
accuse?
if it's socialism that
Hold
comes
on.
after.
Did you just accuse me, a dude that spent like fucking 30 minutes rambling about how he wants to live in a world where there's no capital at all and people can live wherever the fuck they want, of having no vision?
I'm sorry. So let me clarify, and I apologize if I misrepresented you. You said we need to break capitalism. The system should collapse now. And then I said, if the system collapses now, socialism will not be what comes from the rubble. And you said, that's why I'm not a socialist. Which is what, from my interpretation, that was you saying you don't actually care what happens after the system collapses.
No, that's not true. I just don't think that socialism is the best system to advocate for.
Then what do you think will happen?
The crony capitalist, vulture capitalist paradigm that we have now.
Then what?
A resource-based economy. Something like Jacques Fresco's Venus Project. Look, if I have one flaw, Vosh, and maybe it's weird that it took this long for us to get to it, I'm a futurist on top of everything else.
But you want a revolution to happen now?
Yes.
But we aren't going to get that.
Because we don't have time to build this Star Trek utopia if we all burn out like a fucking cinder in the darkness here because we refuse to stop belching carbon into the atmosphere.
That's like saying we don't know if our boat's going to make it to shore before the waves upturn us. Let's light our boat on fire. Just because we don't know if we're going to be able to make it far enough doesn't mean that we should break the system that exists now. You don't know that anything better will come from it.
That's also like being on the fucking deck of the Titanic with a pair of binoculars and seeing icebergs up ahead and going, you know what? Let's turn back and go to port.
You're looking to break the system faster than me, so you have to have a better alternative at the end of it.
I do? That's my sole job as one human being. I've got to be the great fucking thinker that comes up with the next good idea. That doesn't necessarily have to be socialism. It's got to be me. Otherwise, I can't advocate for the positions I advocate for.
If you're advocating we break down the system that exists now, you can't just throw your arms up in the air and go like, well, whatever happens next happens next. Yeah, a revolution in this country would lead to the death of tens of millions of people with a severe risk of an authoritarian government to take power afterwards. You would better have a really good plan to replace what we have now, or you're just gambling on the lives of tens of millions for something that is probably going to be worse than what we have now.
I'm not gambling anything. No revolution is going to start because fat ass, dumbass, stoner ass PaulsEgo said we should start sooner rather than later fighting, and that maybe voting for doddering old Biden, who's going to keep that status quo chugging along, ain't the best fucking thing to do.
You can't back off your ideas by saying that you don't have the power to unilaterally implement them. I know I can't unilaterally implement socialism, but I will defend socialism.
When I see these riots happening, you want to know what my heart of heart hopes?
Yeah?
I hope it's coming to a theater near you and me. I hope that this doesn't stop. I hope that the fucking machinery is wounded to the point where it has to come to the table. And I hope that at that point, the people negotiate a better fucking deal for themselves.
What better deal?
What do you mean, what better deal?
Right now, I can tell you how to negotiate a better deal within Biden's cabinet. How will we negotiate a better deal through that?
Maybe we're just talking about different degrees of better deal. You're talking about a better deal that exists in a paradigm that continues to exploit the fucking third world and cut down the fucking rainforest.
Then what are you offering?
I'm offering the idea. You know what, dude? Here's a fanciful idea. You know how this stuff is spread to some fucking places outside of the United States?
Mm-hmm.
What about a global revolution that happens?
What about it?
What about the chaos that ensues?
What about it? What if all these governments just turn fascist afterwards? That tends to happen after revolutions.
You think that the people that are left that suffered under those fascist systems are going to stand idly by?
Historically, yes. Yes, that does happen. Yeah, when people are scared, they don't turn towards mutual aid. They turn towards a strong man that will secure them.
Okay. What if that strong man had your principles?
They tend not to, because I'm not a strong man. I believe in democracy. They can't. Okay. A strong man can't have my principles.
What if there were more strong men or men that could be strong men like you that existed than there were country ass rednecks.
Then we better wait 30 or 40 more years to make sure that's the case by engaging in electoral policies that lead to more leftists in this country. Right now, there are not more leftists than non-leftists in this planet.
It's because they don't know a better way.
See, so we educate them. That takes time.
We're both on the same page with that, my friend.
Yeah, so we vote in people who will address our failing education system. We show people that worker co-ops are a viable form of economic organization by investing in them and passing legislation that will allow for them to be developed. Yeah, we educate people, but we need to do it through the system, because if we work without the system right now, all we're going to get is a one-way ticket to fascism.
That's part of your educational program. It's not part of that.
I feel like, and this is just the impression that I'm getting, I feel like you glorify conflict, but you don't care what happens afterwards. Because every time I ask you for a specific change that you could ensure would happen, you can't provide one to me.
Okay, while we're sharing things about each other that we feel like that misrepresent each other's positions, possibly, I feel like you're kind of a fucking what would we call him, like a fucking faux revolutionary, or like a LARPer?
Yeah, you know what really bugs me? I care deeply about the revolution. I care very much about the abolition of the commodity form, the end of capitalism. So I'm like, okay, wait, really quickly, because I just what I think is like, okay, let's think. Revolutions are difficult, they're complicated, politics is tough. Let's think of the best possible route that we can get to moving people in a direction where this revolution would succeed. And then I turn around to my leftist comrades and I'm like, hey guys, isn't this a good plan? And they're like, liberal. I'm actually going to do my own revolution. I'm going to take this hammer and I'm going to smash my greasy cock and balls. And they start smashing their greasy cock and balls. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? That's not how you... And they're like, you fucking liberal. This is how you do it, you stupid piece of shit. This is how I feel.
Am I that?
Yeah.
Am I a dude smashing his cock and balls?
Really? A little bit. Yes, so your greasy cock and balls a little bit. Yeah.
Hold on, dude. After the conversation that we just had,
we care about the same values, but your way of getting to those values in the real world is nonsensical to me.
Isn't that how leftists are smashing our own cock and balls, letting something like a disagreement on the method get in the way and tear two people like you and I apart?
No, letting something like I'd say an adherence to practicality matters a lot.
I know. I believe so too. That's why I'm advocating so passionately for my position as you are yours. And you know what, dude? You may feel like I haven't represented my position satisfactorily to you, and I expected that coming into this. I feel the same fucking way, dude. I feel the same fucking way.
I'm not trying to impugn you personally, but I'm asking you directly for like. Right. It's not an antagonism thing, but I'm trying to ask you directly for ways that you could try to build the world that you want, and all I'm getting is, what if we do a revolution faster?
Okay, all right. You want to talk about like the ways things could be rebuilt?
Yeah, what is your road to revolution? Because right now, from my perspective, if we have one right now, we go fascist. This country is not ready for a post-capitalist government, and most of the world isn't either. Most of the world right now is trending to the right.
Okay. Most of the world's governments are trending to the right. I would argue that most of the world's people trend to the left, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Depends on the country.
Let me ask you a question, Wash.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, man. You know what, dude? My head is so filled. What is the ultimate point we're driving at here?
I think
what are we driving at here as two leftists, as two dudes that got a lot of fucking vim and vigor, and both of us got balls, and both of us got audiences, and we're out here preaching for the same kind of fucking world. I was gonna try and poke holes in that with you, and I'm just thinking, Vaj wouldn't. I could sit here and tell you all the things that I would love to have, and how humanity might build a society that works that way. Like, I think that if things fail hard enough, that there might be almost a religious lore around the collapse that I'm talking about. So you and I might have different ideas about degrees of collapse. I know for a fact that tens and tens and tens of millions of people will die in the shitstorm that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And the blood will not be on the hands of leftists like you or I. It will be on bootlickers, and it will be on capitalist supporters and people that helped to prop up the status quo of capitalism that is slowly but surely ratcheting up this fucking crazy tension that has two leftists sitting here going, you're doing it the wrong way. Well, you're doing it the wrong way. Look, I'm not saying your arguments boil down to that. You've made great arguments tonight. I still don't agree with you.
I know. I need a plan. Just saying we want a revolution isn't a plan. It's an ideological commitment. When I think I want a revolution, that's not the end of my statement. I think I
Let me
want
get,
a revolution that wins. It's not enough
let
to
me
just
get,
have one.
let me get tree hugger on you for a second. And this might be fanciful, but I think if we're talking about the same kind of collapse, we're talking about everything falls apart and the people have to rebuild from pretty much scratch. Some of the technology is there, but as far as structure, it's not there. And they have to decide, right? What are we going to do? I think it is possible that your future comes to pass. I think it's possible that a strong man comes along and starts promising the return to capitalistic love and everybody just pay this and pay that. And pretty soon at the end of it, when we rebuild, we've got some form of capitalism in place and it's still torturing us all. I also think that it is possible that there's an almost religious, dogmatic aversion towards capitalism if shit goes down the right way. Because think about what people are going to learn, Vosh,
I don't think that's
when
true.
the fucking bottom falls out of this motherfucker. Think about it. When all the institutions that they spent their whole lives sucking the dick of and supporting and going to work, and I broke my goddamn back, man. And when there's nobody, when they realize that at the end of it, when shit gets so bad, those of us that have are going to pack up their shit and go to an island somewhere, and they're going to leave the rest of us here to eat each other. And you know what? After that happens, there might be a total aversion in the people who are left to any idea that involves one man gaining more capital over another, or one man having private ownership of the river or the forest or the land.
The only people who could recognize the fault of the civilization that just collapsed was capitalism are leftists, and there are very few leftists in our country right now. A Democrat or a Republican, a typical centrist voter, is not going to like see America fall and think like, oh yes, the private acquisition of capital is clearly what's responsible for this. No. They're not. They're going to think, Democrats are going to think it was Trump, and the Republicans are going to think it was immigrants or brown people. No. People are not. People need class consciousness before they are capable of meaningfully bringing about revolutionary conditions. And education is the way to that. Right now, we are not in that position. I'd be willing to bet maybe 3 or 4% of this country is meaningfully class conscious. And the rest of them are just dumb sheep who are being led around by whatever facsimile of the system they think is least reprehensible. I don't think that's enough.
I'm not saying you're this person, Vosh, but I've heard other people with similar positions that you have. You know what? Comrades, listen. Keep your powder dry. There will be a time in the future. You know what? I'm not comparing you to these people, so please don't take offense. But redneck ass Republican people do it the same thing. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a time, boys. One of these days, they're going to elect one too many black men to one too many high off, or you know what I mean, or whatever it is.
Yeah, fuck yeah, yeah, absolutely. The right spirit, wrong ideas. Yeah,
I'm not saying you're that, but you know what? I've found about that time. I've heard a lot of tough talk from a lot of rednecks. I grew up around that shit. It was a real problem. I'm very lucky to have come out the other end of it just as crazy as I am, and a leftist, I think, defensively. So. But I grew up around a bunch of real Republican redneck types, and they were doing it then, and they're doing it now because there's never been anyone that interceded educationally in their lives in a way that actually pointed out the psychological dissonance of being an American, of defending a fucking system that's grinding you to dust in front of your own eyes for just enough to get by.
But I'm in favor of the education. That's what my channel does.
So am I.
But we need time.
Okay, how much?
At least another generation or two. We're not even close right now. We may not live to see a revolution, but I would much rather die in a capitalist hellhole knowing the powder keg has been lit than live to see a revolution fail because we tried to kick it off while 3% of the population actually cared about capitalism and socialism.
I agree with that. I don't necessarily disagree with that. And look, if it was apparent to you that I was calling for everybody to just do it right now with no thought and no process and no coming together as leftists to decide anything, if I made that impression on you, I'm sorry. It's just that I think I overestimate the amount of time that you're talking about, because the type of change that you're describing to me may be attainable in 100 years, 200 years, when the oceans are complete acid and 99.9% of all large ocean fish are dead and belly up. and there are no longer any salmon in any fucking river in the wilds.
But the alternative won't be any faster.
Hold on, places that used to be verdant with fucking orange groves and nut trees and grapes, like it won't even grow anymore. The desertification of the planet in some areas, and the constant retreat of the fucking water lines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Vosh.
In the meantime, there's no preferable alternative. There's no button that we can press to fix climate change. Even if America revolted right now, the majority of the greenhouse gases are being produced by the rest of the world at this point. China is nowhere near a revolution because they're authoritarian and they know how to control their population, which is an idea that our country might start to come to if we don't make sure to vote those fuckers out of office. We need to take whatever time it is necessary to build a class consciousness in our country to make sure we do the revolution right. Because if we don't, and we revolt, and 10 years later it's the same autocratic dipshits ruling this country, except they call themselves viziers or emperor supremes, they're going to go right back to destroying the environment without any ecological considerations, because they don't give a fuck about the future.
If the people that are living in the smoldering ruins of capitalistic fucking fervor let the same fucking people come back and take their asses again, then I guess that's what we deserve as human beings.
Yeah, because we're not educated. Most of the population is politically uneducated. We don't have civics or sociological classes in high school. Most of the population is disenfranchised. People don't realize the government is capable of working for them. There are things we can do to disposition people towards that mindset that is revolutionarily viable. We can move people there. I have a lot of faith in the American people, but we need to make sure the conditions are ripe.
I do too. I have a lot of faith in the American people too. I also am the type of person that feels like, I don't know, and I may be wrong about this, but I just don't think we've got a generation or two. You said a generation or two is what we need to really start building this revolutionary spirit in people, where we're ready to accept the problem and point at the real villain here. We both agree who the villain is. I don't think we have that time. I don't think we have 100 years.
Unless your way does better, it isn't better.
Right, but at least with our last gasps, we tried, and the people that come after it will see the damage that it did to this earth, and the few little pockets of people that managed to fucking eke out an existence will probably have some kind of fucking tribal lore about what came before and how the fucking world was destroyed.
I think this is why people call you like a doomer, kind of, because like the most charitable interpretation of what you just said was immediate revolution, whatever, don't care if it succeeds. If it does, great. If it doesn't, hopefully the tribal humans that come in the wastelands 3,000 years from now will have some sort of religious. Okay, I'd like to base my political advocacy on a little bit more than that, ideally.
That's fine. I'm not, and your insinuation that my entire political advocacy is
no, but that specific argument is literally like, well, if we fuck up, I hope the tribes have a religion about respecting the ocean or something. Like,
I hope they fucking do. I hope they fucking do.
I hope we don't have tribes. I hope we survive.
This incremental fucking approach that you're advocating for doesn't work, and the capitalists and owner class don't give over their buttholes to you. And the time that you're talking about, Vosh, never comes. I hope the tribe that's left of humanity, if we're lucky enough for there to be enough to call it a tribe, has a fucking religion that includes not shitting in the ocean, not shitting on each other with oppressive forms of hierarchical fucking slavery.
Primitivist governments trend towards oppression because it's easier to build a society with a top-down leadership. That's why we see authoritarian breakouts throughout like the Middle East, because it's much easier to default.
I do not think that concept is as highbrow as it's being presented here.
Maybe
I think that your average fucking person could be explained that concept very fucking simply and might even come to it on their own.
I'm not saying that incrementalism will give us the buttholes of the capital owners. I'm saying that we need to take time to build up a revolutionary vanguard so a revolution will succeed and won't just be throwing human civilization into a fire in a failed effort to prevent climate disaster that was going to happen anyway.
No matter how many fucking, no matter how prepared your revolution, which happens, by the way, at whatever time it happens, no matter how prepared they are, you better believe you're going to set some motherfucking fires too. This is not going to be compassionate, whether it goes my way or yours. there's going to be blood in the fucking streets. And you know what? Maybe an insurmountable foe too. Maybe an insurmountable foe.
But I'm not against political violence as a concept. I keep saying, like, I'm fine with revolution. We just need to be able to win it before I'll advocate for it. Why would I advocate for a revolution I know I'll lose?
When they have the nukes and they have the Hellfire missiles strapped to the drones that can, see your fucking house from space, basically.
The soldiers are proletarian. We can reach them. There are leftist comrades right now who are in Afghanistan. We can reach these people too. A generation or two. Imagine a revolution and the military refuses to intervene. We can do it. We're capable of it.
I believe that. I believe that we could be. You want to know how crazy I am? I believe we could be one species on this planet, governed by a body that we all agree on. I don't know what form it takes. I believe that. Yeah. I believe that a new culture could be born from something like that, Vosh, that doesn't disrespect currently existing cultures, but that folds those beautiful things into something new. I believe in that.
We need the right material conditions. We need the right ideological conditions. I can't. A revolution now, just like if when you're defending the idea of immediate revolution, you concede to the idea that we might just lose and all of civilization ends, and you hope the tribal societies that come after do better than us. I think that's a pretty strong argument in favor of the practicality of my case.
Right, I'm going to do what I believe is right here. All right. Okay. I concede this point to you. You are more than likely correct that now is not the fucking time. All right. Now, I hate that I've done this. This may seem like, finally, you just accepted common sense, but you have to understand, this is hard won for me. And I'm not even conceding, the entirety of my belief system to you, but you're right. Now is probably not the time for the fucking shit to be torn down. And there may be some way for dudes like you and me and other people on the left to educate people a little bit.
I hope you understand.
At that point, I also open myself up to my own fucking criticism that I may be leading people down the primrose path and leading people headfirst into ecological collapse with no real preparedness for that. I may be doing. I really feel like that much fucking rides on it.
I hope you understand that I will never feel like a personal antagonism with somebody who shares my goals. Like, it's not.
It can feel that way, and not just because of you. Not just because of you. It's because this bickering on the left has been going on since I was a fucking dude your age, and I'm so sick of it, dude. And I hate to be engaging in it with you, because I don't think that you and I disagree on the outcomes, and I don't think we disagree on the fucking villain here, man. And I'm, whatever. My mind ain't changed. Neither is yours. But fuck, who cares? Is there not room for disparate thought on the left at a time when the world is fucking crumbling, dude? Because if there's not, count me the fuck out. Then I do give up. Then I am the doomer that people call me. Then I will start just going, well, fuck it.
I don't have anything against ideological differences, but it will always remain my responsibility to challenge ideas I think are counterproductive or irresponsible.
I respect it. I respect that.
No matter what my personal feelings are to the people I speak with, however positive they may be.
I respect the position and would mirror it from my side too. And if I came off like I was badgering you or your audience or people that believe like you in any way, it was not my intention to do so. Especially if you're a leftist or a comrade or whatever we're calling each other these days, whatever the new lingo is.
I've heard it's all liberals in my chat, but I'm sure the few lefties will appreciate the sentiment. I'm joking. No, seriously. Oh man, that was a pretty. Oh, they're all hearting you, by the way. So that's
good. Well, thank you guys.
Pretty protracted. I'm glad. Conversation.
It was. I'm sorry it went so long. I apologize to hold you captive for
so
long.
No. I'm really glad you suggested we start talking earlier. I wouldn't have traded up a single second of this conversation. Though I have wanted to pee for quite a long time now, and I commend myself on my personal strength for sticking it through and not pausing.
Go for it, dude.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you'd like to end things up with me so you can kind of close out the show, we can just do that now and you can go piss.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to closing up. So with that being said, thank you very much for coming on. It's one of the best discussions I've had in a long time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for giving us more, what's the right term? Not constructive, more Thank you for allowing us to talk about the riots and the associated political conditions in a way other than just looking at Twitter clips. There awesome. We go.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for being on the right side of history, despite our disagreements on how we get there.
Likewise.
All right, man.
Hey, have a wonderful. Thank you, and I hope we can talk again in the future. And trans rights.
Same here. I'll say it too. Trans rights.
My audience gets real stickler for that one. Yeah.
What do I need to say, man? Yeah.
No, you did. No, you nailed it. No, they liked it.
Yeah.
They're happy.
I hope that was apparent in the way that I feel. But absolutely, trans people. I love them.
It was. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. Okay.
You too. Bye.
Bye. No dual Vosh today. One of me is enough. Thank you. Oh. Whew. Oh, man. Paul is a really, really good dude. I'm glad I had that conversation, but man, that was draining. Whew.